Chapter 106. Why are we going to Mr. Wei Yuan's residence? Instead of answering, Jiang Pengji asked, Why you? Do you know Meng County in Song Prefecture? Compared to Lu Lanting's closed environment, Feng Jin's tutor was more open. Meng County, Song Prefecture? Of course I have some understanding, but what does this have to do with what happened before? Feng Jin was about to transform into 100,000 Ys. Have you heard of some scandals in Meng County, Song Prefecture? For example, some women from aristocratic families were humiliated, but the culprit was never found. The moment Jiang Pengji opened her mouth, it was big news. Feng Jin's face turned green, red, and black, almost like a palette. Nonsense. How can a gentleman be interested in such news? Moreover, if your words spread out, do you want to be criticized by others? Landowning gentry ladies are noble. Even if it happened, it wouldn't be spread out so easily. He wanted to say that it was impossible, but when he thought of the dangerous experience of the noblewoman in Hejin County, he changed his mind. You're right. Jiang Pengji stopped in her tracks and quickly returned to normal. If such a thing really happened, with the current social atmosphere, the possibility of concealing it was far higher than publicizing it. Do you know something? Is it related to that man? Feng Jin hurriedly took 2 steps forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Jiang Pengji. He then remembered that Jiang Pengji said she wanted to go to Wei Yuan's mansion, and his scalp went numb. You're still keeping me in suspense? Feng Jin was very curious. The audience in the live broadcast room expressed that this young man had a bright future. He had asked all their questions. Some old viewers in the streaming room had been following the stream for a long time. They knew that Jiang Pengji was good at analyzing. They were sure that she had found some clues. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to suddenly attack a stranger. However, she refused to explain. Everyone was dumbfounded. Fatty Big C, the man who was forced to take his lunchbox by the host, the bamboo booklet with unknown content, the scandal of a noble lady from Meng County in Song Prefecture being humiliated, the host's teacher, Wei Yuan. When all these clues are connected, it feels extremely scary. Paid axing, now that you mention it, I seem to have thought of something. Could it be that the host's teacher is a monster in human form? Now, what kind of analysis is that? You can't just let your imagination run wild like that, right? The probability of Mr. Wei Yuan being the victim is much higher. Didn't they say that the gentleman had been on sick leave for a long time? Maybe it had something to do with this. For a moment, a game of You Guess was played in the live broadcast room. Based on the clues revealed by the streamer, they began to make wild guesses. As for which speculations were reliable and which were absurd, Jiang Pengji did not give an answer. Wei Yuan was stubborn and strict. He was strict with his students and never lowered his standards because of their age. Lu Lanting did not like going to the family school, but she did not like studying at home either. Wei Yuan was the main reason. According to Lu Lanting's memories, the little girl respected her teacher very much. However, the teacher was strict and unapproachable. He would often call for a teacher's whip and punish people. This made the sensitive Lu Lanting shy and reserved, and she liked to keep her words to herself. Before Lu Lanting's incident, Wei Yuan had applied for 3 days of leave from the Lu Manor. His illness had worsened, and he had to postpone it. Under Takshu's reminder, Jiang Pengji had asked the servants to send gifts to Wei Yuan's manor, but she had never shown up in person. It's rare for me to go to the teacher's manor, but I have to go through the side door. Wei Yuan's manor was a long way from Lang Lang Alley. It took Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin a long time to reach it. By then, it was almost midnight. The sky was dark and the surroundings were silent. Occasionally, they could hear the sound of dogs barking. If you want to visit, you can come during the day. Feng Jin saw that Jiang Pengji was about to roll up her wide sleeves and climb over the wall. His face became distorted, but he did not dare to raise his voice. He could only suppress his voice. If you were caught, Wei Yuan was famous for his strictness. If a student climbed over the wall in the middle of the night, it would be fine if it was in the front yard, but if it was in the backyard, it would be like having mud fall into one's pants. Lu Lanting was not afraid of anything, but he still wanted his reputation. A bad friend could ruin his life. Jiang Pengji stood in the corner for a while and smiled at him. What are you afraid of? Come, I'll be your foothold. You can climb over first. Feng Jin was speechless. They looked at each other in silence for a while. Feng Jin took a deep breath. I don't believe you're that kind. Tell me, how are you going to trick me? Feng Jin clenched his teeth. Only now did he look like a teenager instead of an old and steady noble young master of an aristocratic family. Jiang Pengji smiled. Won't you know after you climb over? Feng Jin looked at her suspiciously, and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. Why don't you climb over first? There was something fishy going on. Jiang Pengji mocked him. You go first, and I'll follow. What if I climb over first? Will you be able to climb over? Don't pretend to be a hero in front of me. Feng Jin was speechless. It was tiring to have such an unreliable companion. Logically speaking, with Feng Jin's upbringing, he would never mess around with Jiang Pengji. But he was only a teenager. He had to maintain a steady image in front of others, and he needed some breathing space when he was alone. Not to mention that he admired Jiang Pengji and wanted to know what she was up to. He had fallen for her trap. Feng Jin gritted his teeth and nodded in agreement. He had left behind a dark history that could not be erased. Wei Yuan came from an ordinary family. His mansion was simple, and the walls were not high. Jiang Pengji lowered her body and crossed her arms, indicating for Feng Jin to step on her. Compared to her decisiveness and straightforwardness, Feng Jin was a bit hesitant. Even though his companion was bold and unrestrained, he always forgot her gender. But no matter how forgetful he was, he could not forget the difference in their genders. How can you be so impatient? Feng Jin muttered. He carefully held on to the uneven part of the wall. He had taken off his wooden clogs and was only wearing socks. He stepped on Jiang Pengji's crossed arms with his bare feet. He thought they would fall miserably, but he did not expect his feet to be so steady. He swore that he had never been so rude in his life. He used all his strength to crawl on the wall. Okay, I'm up. It's your turn now, right? Feng Jin looked down from the wall. It was a bit high, and he felt dizzy. Buffed. Under the wall, Jiang Pengji burst into laughter. It was especially obvious in the silent night. Feng Jin's heart skipped a beat. Why you? Why don't you take a look at the other side of the wall? Isn't there a bunch of people guarding there? Feng Jin was speechless. He had a bad feeling. He turned his head shakily and stretched his neck to the other side of the wall. Within the walls, they looked at each other. Lu Shi, he was furious. It's better for you to die than for me. If it doesn't work, then let's die together. Chapter 107. I heard you calling me. You don't have to be so loud. Everyone in the neighborhood knows. Without waiting for Feng Jin to really get angry, Jiang Pengji leaped up and stepped on the wall. Using the momentum, she climbed steadily to the top of the wall. Feng Jin hugged the wall with both of his hands, looking extremely flustered. He looked up at Jiang Pengji with trembling eyes, as if he was looking at his enemy. If he had known that Jiang Pengji was very naive, unreliable, he would have foolishly jumped into her trap. It was a great humiliation. Feng Jin was in a dilemma. He wished he could strangle his previous self to death. Sir, please don't blame me. Why you and I came here today for a reason. We had no choice but to climb over the wall. Jiang Pengji said with a smile. When she jumped into the wall, she conveniently brought Feng Jin, who was clinging to the wall, down. Inside the walls, there were indeed a few servants guarding. Other than that, a middle-aged man dressed in plain clothes stood in front of them like a pine tree. He had a neatly trimmed beard and a pair of dark and gloomy eyes. He stared at Jiang Pengji with some suspicion and scrutiny. That was to be expected. For a student to climb over his teacher's wall in the middle of the night, and at such a sensitive time, anyone would be suspicious. However, Wei Yuan didn't pin the crime on her, because her age didn't meet the criteria. In any case, Wei Yuan was still a student that he had personally taught. His student would not be a despicable person. Lanting, you've really harmed me this time. He had made a bad friend by mistake, and his 10 years of good reputation would be ruined in a day. Be good, don't throw a tantrum. Jiang Pengji dismissed him like she was coaxing a child. Feng Jin widened his eyes in astonishment, as if it was his first day meeting Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji bowed to Wei Yuan and greeted him respectfully. Sir. Wei Yuan didn't appreciate it. Instead, he coldly flicked his sleeves and dodged her bow, giving her a cold snort. He did believe that Lu Shi was not a despicable person, but that did not explain why the kid climbed over his wall in the middle of the night. Climbing over the wall was one thing, but observing the conversation between him and the strange young man, Lanting clearly knew that there was someone on the other side of the wall, yet he deliberately climbed over. Knowing one's mistake and making a mistake was even worse. Feng Jin straightened his wide sleeves and did not bother to tidy up his slightly disheveled appearance. He bowed deeply to Wei Yuan. Feng Jin greets Mr. Wei. There is a reason for what happened today. Mr. Wei, please calm down and wait for Lanting's explanation. Although Feng Jin could not wait to have a showdown with Jiang Pingji, the two of them were on the same boat. Before Wei Yuan's anger was extinguished, they had to work together and not drag each other down. Feng Jin, your surname is Feng, but the Feng family of Shangyang? What does Minister Feng Xianda have to do with you? Feng was a rare surname. In Dongqing, when the Feng family was mentioned, most people would subconsciously think of the Feng family in Shangyang. Wei Yuan looked at Feng Jin's clothes and accessories. They were all expensive and hard to find treasures. It was obvious that his family was not poor. Feng Jin blushed and felt extremely embarrassed. He couldn't answer, but he also could not answer. In the end, he blushed and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, I am from the Feng family of Shangyang. The minister is my father. Wei Yuan was speechless. Faced with Wei Yuan's almost indifferent expression, some of the quick-witted spectators quickly moved their fingers, drowning his face in the barrage of insults. Now, oh my God, the son of the minister came to my house. Fatty Big C. Blue Skinny Xianggu, this guy's background is too big. How should we deal with him? Urgent, waiting online. Hongjun Laozu's Juhua. Don't be fooled by my nonchalance. I'm actually burning with anxiety. How can I maintain my cold and aloof image? This guy in front of me doesn't play by the rules. I can't beat his father. Urgent, waiting online. Of course, there were also some insults in a more bizarre style. Sorcerer's girl offing. That guy is the son of the minister of Shangyang. Despicable, truly despicable. Jiang Pingji thought that Wei Yuan's expression and the barrage of comments made it even more delicious. She was secretly delighted, but her expression did not change. Instead, a chuckle beside her attracted everyone's attention. At that moment, she noticed that there was not only a fully armed servant beside Wei Yuan, but also a young man in his 20s. The man's eyebrows were slightly sharp, and his eyes were dark and lifeless. Being stared at by him made one feel an inexplicable chill in one's heart. His complexion and skin were a bit rough and dark yellow, but his appearance was extremely heroic. Even the gloomy coldness in his eyes couldn't make people ignore the advantage of his facial features. His face was deep, and his lips were slightly dry, with some white skin curling up. It was like a cracked riverbed that had been dry for a long time. The material of his clothes was not very good, and it was a little old. Not only did it not fit him well, but it had also been washed to the point of discoloration. His collar and cuffs were badly worn, but his hair was combed neatly, and he stood tall and straight, so one could not tell that he was in dire straits. He was in his 20s, and his wife and widower had died. He had come from the north, and it seemed that he was from a border city near the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. His father was of a different race, and his mother was a gentle and loving Chinese woman. The two of them were not happy, and his father had a bad habit of abusing his wife and children. He was cold and ruthless, and he had killed more than one person. His father was already dead, and he was probably the one who killed him. His palms were thick, and his knuckles were slightly deformed from years of martial arts practice. He was much stronger than Feng Jin. His socks were bleeding, and the wound was on his feet, but he could still maintain his upright posture without a change in expression. She liked his ruthlessness and forbearance. While Jiang Pengji was analyzing him, the young man was also sizing her up. After a long time, the young man shook his feather fan and faced Wei Yuan with regret. Master Gongchao, it's not him. Wei Yuan's face darkened. A few servants still surrounded Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin, not daring to let their guard down. He trusted his student, so he did not doubt the young man's judgment. But he could not think of a reason why his student would climb over the wall in the middle of the night. Master, I came here today because of an urgent matter. If not, I would not have to resort to such a method. Jiang Pengji didn't mind, but Wei Yuan couldn't bear to see such a shocking act. If this matter were to spread out, who knew what kind of people would talk about it? He would not be able to face anyone, and Lu Lanting would be ruined. No matter what the student wanted to talk to him about, he had chosen to climb over the wall instead of using the main door. It would be strange if someone like him could stand it. Feng Jin treated himself as the background and kept his head down. He was implicated by Lu Shi, the scammer, in this matter. Oh, I want to hear what reason you have. Chapter 108. If the student could give in and apologize, Wei Yuan would tolerate it for Lu Shi's sake, no matter how unhappy he was. But now, he was so angry that he laughed. He had to hear what the stubborn student had to say. What was so important that she had to climb over the wall in the middle of the night? Jiang Pengji was not afraid at all. Instead, she looked confident. The young man with the feather fan raised his hand. His eyes flashed with interest as he said to Wei Yuan, Master Gongxiao, why don't you go to the main hall and listen to what this young man has to say? It would be best if you could dismiss your attendance. I'm sure this young man will not disappoint you. Wei Yuan was shocked to hear this. However, he was also a wise old man. He quickly composed himself and put on a stern face. Come here. Jiang Pengji stopped him. There is no need to rush. Before I explain, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you will agree to it. Speak. This student would like to take the liberty to meet the womenfolk in Sir's backyard, including a group of female servants. Wei Yuan was angered by her insatiable behavior. If it were not for the young man's words, he would have started scolding her. A 12-year-old was considered half an adult in this era. Many of them had their own families. Naturally, Wei Yuan did not see Jiang Pengji as a child. He saw her as an adult man. An adult male had climbed over his wall in the middle of the night and even said that he wanted to see the women in his house. Faced with such straightforward humiliation, it was already a sign of his self-restraint that he didn't lash out at him, kick him out, or send him to the magistrate's office. Love, go, little Shawnette. Chu, the young man narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiang Pengji. He had an intuition. Master Gongxiao, you'd better agree. This young man did not come with evil intentions. I'm afraid it is for your own good. Wei Yuan, who had been furious, calmed down by the young man's words. This change made Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin look at him carefully. Jiang Pengji had exposed the young man's past. The young man felt a chill in his heart, but he could not tell why. Wei Yuan's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and agreed. Just listen to Wenjing once. Jiang Pengji laughed to herself. It seemed that the teacher's sick leave was fake and the haunting in the backyard was real. According to this person's temperament, if he found out that there were strange men's clothes or traces of activity in his concubine's room, he would be so angry that his blood pressure would soar. The reason why he had taken leave until now was probably because he had not finished with this mess. He wanted to catch the adulterer, but he ran into her. Wei Yuan walked in front with big strides. Jiang Pengji followed behind him at a steady pace. She was right next to the young man. She smiled and asked tentatively, How should I address you? Lang Jun? Feng Jin's expression seemed normal, but there was a hint of displeasure in it. His bad friend had tricked him, and before he could even give him an explanation, he had already hooked up with a weird-looking outsider. How unfair. I am Qiguan Rang. Jiang Pengji frowned. Although she hated the messy names in this era, she still asked out of habit, What's your courtesy name? The young man's eyes were still gloomy, and he said mercilessly, My young friend, our relationship is shallow. We don't even have a courtesy name. In other words, he said, I don't know you that well. Don't try to get close to me. Jiang Pengji's heart skipped a beat. She lowered her voice and asked at a volume that only she, the young man, and Feng Jin could hear. Don't say that. Strictly speaking, you are my future brother-in-law. Why do you have to treat me like an outsider? Feng Jin listened attentively, and then he looked confused. Lanting has a sister? After asking, he came back to his senses. Lucy did have a mistress's daughter, but she seemed to be less than 9 years old. Feng Jin was dumbfounded. However, when her words fell into the young man's ears, it was no different from a sudden clap of thunder. His mind went blank for a moment. She interrupted him and repeated her question. What's your courtesy name? If she wanted to know, she had to know. Even if he did not want to answer, she would find a way to make him answer. The young man was speechless. After a while, the young man calmed himself down and said calmly, Didn't you hear him? Jiang Pengji raised her eyelids and rolled her eyes. It's different when you introduce yourself and when others mention it in passing. The young man took a deep breath and faintly sympathized with Feng Jin. That must be how he felt when he was tricked. My name is Qiguan Rang. My courtesy name is Wenjing. How should I address you? Lu Shi. That's it. The young man waited for a while, but he did not hear anything else. His expression became slightly twisted as he suddenly remembered Feng Jin mentioning Lanting. That must be Lu Shi's courtesy name. Although they had only met for a short while, the young man had the urge to raise his fan and slap her. She was asking for a beating. Jiang Pengji looked at Wei Yuan's silhouette in front of her with a complicated expression. Wenjing, are you curious about how I know that you are looking for a son-in-law? Qiguan Rang nodded. He was indeed curious. Wei Yuan had only mentioned it to him vaguely, and no one else knew about it. Jiang Pengji revealed it as soon as she arrived, so it was impossible for Qiguan Rang not to be curious. Could she be eavesdropping? That was impossible. Jiang Pengji was about to speak, but she suddenly turned to Feng Jin and said, Don't listen to indecent things. Cover your ears. Feng Jin was speechless. He was innocent. Although he was also curious, since Jiang Pengji had said so, the inside story was probably not suitable for people other than Qiguan Rang to listen. He obediently raised his hands to cover his ears and purposely took a few steps back to prevent himself from accidentally hearing something. His pitiful appearance instantly aroused the sympathy of a group of otakus overflowing with motherly love in the live broadcast room. Gifs flooded the screen like a stream of water. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji wanted to bully Feng Jin even more. What should she do? Wenjing's arrival at the Wei residence was not at the right time. It coincidentally happened to be a scandal that outsiders should not listen to. Jiang Pengji whispered the contents that shocked Qiguan Rang. This content is not only related to Master Wei's concubines in his harem. More seriously, it may even implicate his daughters, who are my 2 junior sisters. Thinking about it, even if the 2 ladies are fine, their reputations will be ruined in a day. Following that, Jiang Pengji calmly revealed a series of high-powered information. Wenjing, you lost your wife at a young age, and you were born in the border of the northern borderline. The people there are tough, and they don't care much about a woman's reputation. At least, they don't care about it as much as the noble sons of Dongqing's aristocratic families. With such a thing happening, no matter if it's the eldest or the second lady, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to get married in the future. If such a thing happened to the daughters of the aristocratic families, it would not be too difficult for them to get married. Of course, they could not be picky about the conditions of their husbands. They could either marry a son of the first wife with a slightly higher status, or a son of a concubine who was hardworking and talented but had a lower status. Chapter 109. Mr. Wei understands this. He doesn't want to ruin the rest of his daughter's life, but he also doesn't want them to live the rest of their lives in solitary confinement. So he has to find another way out. He thinks highly of your talent and admires you. He might even want to betroth his daughter to you. Now that this has happened, there's no way he'll let you go. I said you're his future brother-in-law. What's wrong with that? Qiguan Rang was silent for a while. Or rather, he was speechless. The young man named Lu Shi's analysis was correct, but he still had a few doubts. Jiang Pengji moved closer and said mysteriously, It's the first lady, right? Qiguan Rang glanced at her. He had one more doubt. He walked away quickly, not wanting to see the gossipy expression on Jiang Pengji's face. He wanted some peace and quiet. Lovelorn front-lieming. Why does he feel sorry for Qiguan Rang? The streamer exposed his secrets the moment they met. I guess he's feeling a little uneasy. I don't care if Dilly doesn't stop or if he's glad. I'm glad I don't live in an environment where there's no streamer. Even though it was fun to watch the live stream, and they could even complain about it on the bullet screen, watching the streamer bully others or tear apart her own viewers, it was all from the perspective of a bystander. It was just a show to kill time. If there was such a person in real life, it would be horrifying to see through one's secrets the moment they met. A secret is a secret because only a few people know about it. However, Jiang Pengji's actions broke this rule. Naturally, it would cause others to be afraid and ostracize her. She doesn't play by the rules. Secrets have nowhere to hide from her. She's a monster. Love 100%. I checked the surnames on Baidu. If it's a surname, it should be Qiguan, right? Tong Chi, 2 times. 100 Ghost Night Walk, _ smiley face, 3 angle, _ I'm just an ordinary person. I'm happy watching, so I don't think too much. Tuda Faccio, same. As long as you're happy. We're just watching the live stream. Why think so much? Streamer Zheng Shanghua. We're watching the live stream from the streamer's perspective. The viewing experience should be from the streamer's perspective and role. If it was a stupid host who got bullied and stepped on everywhere, who would be able to watch it? Anyway, I'm feeling all sorts of good now. Streamer side of me, 23333 after watching the live broadcast, I feel like my IQ has increased by several %. Streamer's back on me. Who's better at topping up IQ? Palace Intrigue livestream helps you. Jiang Pengji was speechless. No matter what, she couldn't face these demonic audiences and their IDs. Although Feng Jin did not hear what the two of them said, he could not help but remember how Jiang Pengji had threatened him when he saw Qiguan Rang's reaction. Suddenly, he felt sympathy for her and complained to her, "You scared him. You're scared just like that? What shall we do then?" She said significantly, "Shall we have to be alarmed every day?" Lao Siji Liaming. Who's so surprised? Jiang Pengji was speechless. He had a bad premonition. Even though Wei Yuan was extremely unhappy, he still followed Jiang Pengji's instructions and asked the womenfolk to come out and look at them through the thin screen. She frowned and shook her head. Wei Yuan's face darkened, and he ordered the maidservants to bring them back. Next were the female servants. The female servants were not as refined as the female servants, and it was fine for them to be stared at by an outsider once or twice. Therefore, they were simply allowed to gather in a relatively wide corridor. The surrounding servants each held a torch, brightly illuminating the courtyard. Feng Jin saw that she was serious and did not dare to interrupt her thoughts. Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pengji seriously, as if he was trying to read some useful information from her face. However, the result surprised him. He was a 12-year-old boy, the age when his emotions should be the most exposed. Even if he had been educated by an aristocratic family, his age and experience made it impossible for him to be as impenetrable as an old fox. People would always be able to find a loophole. But the boy's situation made him tremble with fear, and he was secretly very excited. The more he could not find out, the more it meant that the boy was full of secrets. In Qiguan Rang's opinion, there were 2 extraordinary people in Dongqing in recent years. One was Master Yuan Jing of Langya, who single-handedly took back the 3 cities by the border. The other was Lu Shi of Hejian, who had worked hard for many years to bring Hu County back to life. He had achieved a feat that many capable officials of the previous Ya dynasty could not achieve. Lu Shi was Lu Shi's son. He had the demeanor of his father, but he was also a hidden person. Lanting, what did you find out? It was rare for Qiguan Rang to put on a stiff smile. The corners of his lips were raised unnaturally. Perhaps he was used to wearing a cold expression all year round. The emotion of smiling was too foreign to him. Therefore, when he smiled, it was more of a fake smile. It was strange and treacherous. Of course I found out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to answer to the master today, would I? After she finished speaking, Jiang Pengji got up and walked to the corridor. She walked straight into the crowd of servants, her eyes fixed on one target. It was a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. Her skin was brown, and there were 3 wrinkles between her eyebrows. There were obvious wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She looked a few years older than her actual age. Her shoulders were slightly bowed, and she looked extremely honest. Her fingertips that were exposed outside her sleeves were red and purple. Before she was called there, she was diligently washing clothes with well water. At first glance, she was just an ordinary servant. She had the dullness and diligence of an honest person. There was nothing special about her. If there was anything wrong with her, it would be that her appearance was average, but her facial features were kind. She gave people a feeling that she was easy to get along with. However, some people were born with a strong affinity. That could not be used as evidence that there was something wrong with her. Chiguan Rang quickly glanced at the target Jiang Pengji was staring at. He was slightly suspicious. Why did she look for a servant? Could it be? Chiguan Rang's eyes turned quickly. His eyes were wide open because of the answer that flashed in his mind. So that was the truth. Chiguan Rang's eyes flashed. He opened his mouth and said, "Catch that woman." Jiang Pengji walked toward her. The servant kept her head down, as if she was the most ordinary servant. There was no flaw in her expression. However, her nerves were secretly on edge. Until Jiang Pengji was in front of her, her nerves were already at their most sensitive. At that moment, Chiguan Rang's voice exploded in her ears. Or rather, he was completely flustered. He knew that his identity was exposed, and he did not mean to trick him. "You still want to escape?" The person panicked. He quickly grabbed a servant beside him and pushed him toward Jiang Pengji. The crowd was in an uproar. The order was instantly chaotic. Chapter 110. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before the crowd could recover from the shock, they were plunged into another wave of fear. "Someone's dead." No one knew who shouted, but the crowd was as quiet as chickens. They silently retreated, forming a large circle. "What are you shouting for? She's not dead yet." Jiang Pengji scolded. The crowd could not help but move to the sides to make a path for her. The maid who was pushed had just woken up from the scare. She was distracted just now and suddenly felt a huge force pushing her in another direction. For a moment, she was so scared that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Then, she fell steadily into a thin but strong embrace. She raised her head shyly and stole a glance at Jiang Pengji's appearance. From this angle, she looked as delicate and pretty as a lady. She thought blankly. Then, as if she had touched a fire, she quickly left Jiang Pengji. "Thank you for saving me, Lang Jun." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. She did not dare to raise her voice. "It's good that you're fine. You and the rest of the servants should go and rest. It's best if you forget what happened tonight." Jiang Pengji stared coldly at the servant who was lying on the ground, her hands covering her bleeding neck. Her voice was cold as ice. The maid did not care. She timidly glanced at Mr. Wei Yuan. After getting his approval, she followed Jiang Pengji's orders. After all, they were not servants of the Lus. If they listened to Jiang Pengji's orders without hesitation, Wei Yuan would probably feel uncomfortable. This is clearly a woman. Wei Yuan only left his trusted butler behind. The rest of the servants were dismissed. Jiang Pengji saw the sandalwood fan that she had thrown and cut the servant his neck. She bent down to pick it up and wiped the blood off with a handkerchief. "How could it be a woman? If you don't believe me, why don't you take off all your clothes and check?" Wei Yuan nodded and signaled for the butler to help. Jiang Pengji looked down and stood aside. She was like a spectator in the live stream room. However, the viewers in the live stream room were not calm. They saw the butler roll up his sleeves and touch the servant's crotch. He seemed to pinch it. His face scrunched up like a chrysanthemum flower, and then a look of horror appeared on his face. The scene was too intense. Everything happened too suddenly. They were so shocked that they forgot to comment. Hong Jun Laozu's chrysanthemum. */W***. Oh, my eyes are going blind. First, the host had stepped on the other party's balls and D***CK. Then, an elderly man had touched a woman who looked like a middle-aged woman. Today's live broadcast was too dirty. Streamer Zhengchao Shengguo. I don't care about anything else. I just want to know how it feels. Although the live stream was very dirty, the old driver in the live stream room seemed to be even dirtier. Things like moral integrity were lost after a while. The system which had not said anything for a while, was bad. The system translator, Lu editor, Lu editor, Lu editor, asterisk asterisk. The viewers in the live stream room are so dirty. Can I control their mouths and their hands? As a system, it's your dereliction of duty if you don't censor or censor certain words. What does that have to do with me? Jiang Pengji pushed the blame away. The system, she sounded reasonable. It could not think of a reason to refute her. While they were bickering, the old butler stood up and walked to Wei Yuan's side. He nodded solemnly. It's really a man. Wei Yuan almost fainted from anger when he heard the answer. He did not have any impression of his servants in the backyard, but he knew that those who did laundry had the right to enter the inner and outer courtyards. In other words, the culprit who bullied his concubine, made him a cuckold, and ruined his daughter's reputation was the wailing bastard in front of him. He was still angry when he remembered that he had accidentally found a male object when he was resting in his concubine's room. What made him feel even more humiliated was that the scandal had already reached the ears of someone who should not have known. Qiguan Rang was the son-in-law that he had his eyes on. He came from a poor family and had a rough life. He was also a widower who had lost his wife. Although his eldest daughter was a bit of a loss, it was not shameful for her to be with him. He had observed Qiguan Rang for a long time and felt that he could be trusted. Since Qiguan Rang was his future son-in-law, even if it was shameful, it was still his family. For the sake of his poor daughter, he was willing to let go of his pride. What harm was there in enduring it? His student, Lu Shi, was also involved. He seemed to be in the know. Otherwise, how could he explain the kid's actions that night? Was he going to make Lu Shi his son-in-law as well? What was more depressing was that if the kid had not climbed over the wall in the middle of the night, the fake woman in front of them would have escaped, and they would not have been able to find the culprit. Therefore, he couldn't blame himself, but if he didn't blame himself, he would be holding back his anger, and he would always feel embarrassed. His illustrious reputation had been completely thrown away tonight. As he thought about it, Wei Yuan's usually straight back could not help but slump a little. It was as if he was in his twilight years. Even though Feng Jin did not know what had happened, based on the information that Jiang Pengji had revealed in her reaction, he could roughly guess the truth. When the housekeeper confirmed that the servant was a man, he wished he had been blind. Lu Shi, this naive and sweet, unreliable friend of his, had actually dragged him into this kind of scandal. Even though he was able to keep his mouth shut, Wei Yuan was probably already holding a grudge against him. It would have been fine if Feng Jin didn't move, but once he did, Wei Yuan noticed him. Wei Yuan was speechless. Oh, I forgot there's another one. Streamers sighed Xianghua. Even though I know I shouldn't laugh at a time like this, I can't help but want to laugh. This Master Wei Yuan is so unlucky. His wives and concubines are being bullied, and he's being cuckolded. Streamers back Xianghua. Even though I want to laugh too, I'm more concerned about my wives and concubines. Yes, they were watching the live stream for fun. To put it simply, they were watching the gossip of others for entertainment. But the person at the center of the incident might not be so happy. Needless to say, Wei Yuan seemed to be an old-fashioned ancient Confucian. His wives and concubines were touched by a man outside. Even if he was still innocent, as an ancient man, he would definitely have a knot his heart. So, what about the unlucky women in the backyard? Based on the streamer's conversation with Qiguan Rang, Wei Yuan treated his daughters well. He was willing to plan for the rest of their lives for them. But wives and concubines were not daughters. It was a matter of a man's dignity and the color of his hat. How could he be so kind? It was one thing to watch the spectacle, but it was another thing to feel sympathy or not. Chapter 111. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Jiang Pengji looked coldly at the series of comments and countless large donations on the live streaming screen. Most of them hoped that she could help the innocent women who were implicated. She laughed in her heart, but at the same time, she was somewhat silent. It was fun to watch the drama and treat the pain of others as entertainment. But the sympathy and actions they showed after the incident were not completely fake. More than half of them were sincere. What a contradictory group of people. Jiang Pengji did not respond to the audience. Instead, she looked at Wei Yuan with interest. She guessed that the teacher had started to think that she knew about his scandal. Even though she did know about it, according to her previous actions, the situation could still be turned around. She took a step forward and kicked the artificial dumpling away with her wooden clogs, forcing it to turn over. She asked softly, "How do you plan to deal with this criminal?" Wei Yuan's face had turned black. It was as if he was on the verge of exploding. "Kill him and feed him to the dogs. Do you want to keep him alive to harm others?" Wei Yuan answered subconsciously. When he regained his composure, he realized that his tone was filled with violence. It was a far cry from his usual demeanor. As for reporting it to the authorities? Haha, if he reported it to the authorities, it would be the same as announcing his family's scandal to the world. He would be too ashamed to live. The servant, who was tied up like a dumpling and gagged, curled up on the ground and whimpered as if she was begging for mercy. "Kill him and feed him to the dogs. That's a good idea." Jiang Pengji smiled faintly. Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang, who were beside her, gave her a scrutinizing look. Feng Jin reacted quickly. After witnessing Jiang Pengji's ruthless methods, he did not expect her to be kind. Qiguan Rang, on the other hand, was shocked and curious. Shouldn't a pampered noble son be so indecisive? Shouldn't he be soft-hearted all the time? But this person was different. Not only was he not kind, but he carried a shocking coldness and hostility. "However, I came here tonight for this person. Please forgive me, teacher, and let him live for the time being." Jiang Pengji bowed and apologized. Under Wei Yuan's suspicious gaze, she explained, "Tonight, I was having a drink with my father at the Ingshan brothel. I happened to see an old maid bullying a lady in the brothel. I didn't think much of it at first, but the more I looked at her, the more I felt there was something strange about her." Wei Yuan was speechless. Wait a minute, I seem to have heard something very powerful. If he hadn't heard wrongly, the kid had said that he and his father, Lu Shi, the father and son, were drinking in a brothel. Qiguan Rang also felt that his worldview had been refreshed. A father and son going to that kind of place? Father and son going to that kind of place? Jiang Pengji didn't care about their strange gazes. Anyway, Lu Shi would take all the blame. Out of curiosity, I followed them, but I saw a great show of people turning into living beings. After the other party took off his clothes one by one, a gray-haired old woman who was sweeping the floor turned into a man of about 30 years of age with a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks. She had wanted to leave, but she had disturbed them and captured them. After inquiring, I found out the truth. Because of this, I had to climb over the wall in the middle of the night. If I had waited until tomorrow, I'm afraid. Jiang Pengji simplified the process. She also beautified the interrogation as questioning. There was nothing bloody about it. Then, she took out a small roll of bamboo slips and presented it to Wei Yuan. "Based on what I know, there are more than just these two men who know of this disguise method and blend into the backyard of others. Why do they do it? Maybe they're trying to escape from the authorities. They're probably from Tsang Prefecture's Meng County. They sneaked to Hejian recently." Jiang Pengji said it in a businesslike manner. She was just short of telling Wei Yuan that she had no idea what was going on in his backyard. Of course, this was just an obvious cover. Although it was useless, covering it was better than not covering it. Wei Yuan took the bamboo scroll and looked through it. His face changed from anger to ashen, and then to silence. Although he was silent, the anger in his heart was stronger than before. These vermin, after a long time, Wei Yuan's face turned ashen as he smashed the bamboo scroll in his hand. Jiang Pengji looked down and did not have the slightest intention of picking up the booklet. How is this a proper scroll? It's the great achievements of those guys. On a certain day, they would target a woman or a girl, disguise themselves as a woman, and try to sneak into the family. They would patiently achieve their goal. Not only would they describe the woman's appearance, age, figure, and skin feel, but they would also proudly write down their thoughts after the deed was done. They would also summarize the pros and cons of the operation. Of course, they would also summarize their personal experiences, such as how to silence the victim or how to coax them to have sex with them multiple times. Occasionally, They would mock the man of the house for not being able to satisfy the woman and praise themselves. But that was not the point. The point was the origin of the women. 30% of them were ordinary women from Meng County, Song Prefecture, or women who had been widowed for a long time. The other 70% were the concubines of rich merchants and poor families. There were even some unmarried girls who could not escape the clutches of those people. What's more, Wei Yuan even saw some of his acquaintances in the scroll. When he thought of his acquaintances in Meng County, Song Prefecture, doing the same thing, he felt anger and sympathy. Fortunately, he did not see the contents of his own backyard. Otherwise, he would not be able to face his students. These people were originally from Meng County, Song Prefecture. They are arrogant and familiar with their methods. It's not the first time they've done this. What a joke. If they were not familiar with it, they would not have been able to write such a concise and comprehensive afterthought. In the other room, Qiguan Rang had already picked up the scroll and skimmed through it. After Wei Yuan calmed down, he frowned. If the contents are true, then the truth must be shocking. Jiang Pengji snorted. It's not just shocking. Look at this scroll. What did you discover about the materials used to make the bamboo slips? Look at the handwriting. Although it is not the work of a master, you can see that it is a solid foundation. If it was not for hard work, how could one have such skills? Besides, these families are all famous people in Meng County, Song Prefecture. Their backyards may not be as thick as an iron bucket, but it is not a place that ordinary servants can enter. How can a lowly servant easily come into contact with an unmarried wife or a married woman? Wei Yuan did not say anything. Qiguan Rang sat up straight and waved the feather fan in his hand. His cold eyes shone brightly. Everyone knew that these vermin who had been harassing women in other people's backyards for fun had a powerful background. Chapter 112. I have a guess, but I haven't verified it yet, so I can't say it out loud. Qiguan Rang looked down and turned to Jiang Pengji. Lanting came to visit late at night because she got the information from that person. If that's the case, do you have any clues about the others? Jiang Pengji shook her head. No. If she didn't know the exact number of people, she wouldn't have needed to go to Wei Yuan's place to catch the person. Those people were very cautious and had almost no contact with each other. If you trust me, you can hand the person over to me. I guarantee that he will tell you everything about his ancestors. As Jiang Pengji spoke, a faint smile hung on the corner of her lips. It made one shudder with fear, and Qiguan Rang secretly glanced at her. No matter how angry Wei Yuan was, the matter had already been settled, and it seemed that there were some unspeakable scandals involved. Wei Yuan's surname was Wei, and he was related to Wei Jingxian's family. But he wasn't as prominent as Wei Jingxian. If it was just a normal rapist, he could just kill him in secret. But if it was serious, he couldn't do anything about it. Up to you. She was very familiar with interrogations, but other than the viewers in the streaming room who were lucky enough to witness it once, no one else had seen it. Jiang Pengji didn't plan to let others see it to avoid ruining Lu Shi's reputation. Then I'll leave first. I'll come back to you after I get some information. Then she led the others away. Feng Jin stayed with Wei Yuan and Jiang Pengji. Qiguan Rang watched her leave. Suspicion flashed in his eyes, and he kept hitting his knees with his feather fan. Second Lang Jun Lu's way of doing things is a bit strange. He's completely different from what Mr. Wei said. Feng Jin was lost in thought when he heard Qiguan Rang's words. He snapped back to reality and looked at Qiguan Rang. Lanting is a bit out of line, but it's not strange. She's still a child, and she's at an age where her temperament isn't stable. If she's not restrained, she'll go astray. If there's a big change, it's normal for her to change. Feng Jin defended Jiang Pengji gently, which made Qiguan Rang look at him. Accident. Wei Yuan suddenly remembered that due to family matters, it had been a long time since he had gone to the Lu residence to teach a student. He didn't know much about this obedient and sensible student who he rarely worried about. He didn't even know what had happened to make this student seem like a stranger. In the past, Lu Shi had always treated him with respect and even fear. Now, he was still respectful, but it was more on the surface. Mister, you don't know? A few days ago, the bandits in the mountains ran into Lanting and a group of noble ladies in Hudging County and took them away. If not for Lanting's quick wit, they might not have been able to escape unscathed. It must have been that incident that caused Lanting's temperament to change. Feng Jin didn't know what kind of person Lu Shi was in the past, and he didn't deliberately dig into it. What he saw was the willful and cunning Jiang Pengji. I've never heard of such a thing. Wei Yuan's expression softened, and there was even a hint of guilt on his face. A teacher for a day, a father for life. This saying was not only useful for students, it was also useful for teachers. Even though he always felt that his students' comprehension was too low, his reaction was too slow, and his spirituality was insufficient, he was still a student that he had taught for many years. He had feelings for his student. Something so big had happened to him, but as a teacher, he had neglected it. On the other side, Jiang Pengji had neatly forced the man into a state of confusion. This time, the audience in the streaming room was much calmer than the previous time. Or perhaps they were mentally prepared. Another important reason was that Jiang Pengji's behavior was in line with their subconscious idea of using violence to curb violence. If they sympathized with the beast that had harmed so many innocent women, who would sympathize with the poor women that had been abused? The ancient times were not their era. If a woman were to experience such a thing, it would be equivalent to ruining the rest of her peaceful life. Therefore, there was no need to sympathize with the beast. However, even though they didn't want to punish Jiang Pengji, they couldn't stand the way she did things while commenting on the bullet screen. It was as scary as the ring of death. They were scared, but they couldn't bear to leave the streaming room. They could only use the bullet screen to protect themselves from the horrible images. Wuliang, Tianzuan, high energy ahead, bullet screen protection. All the mighty ones will defend with me. Now, prosperity, democracy, civility, harmony, freedom, equality, justice, rule of law, patriotism, professionalism, integrity, friendliness. Similar duplicated bullet screens filled the entire live streaming screen, forcing Jiang Pengji to temporarily turn them off. What's your name? Jiang Pengji asked the most basic question. Lin Zhouzi. Her mouth twitched. The previous one was Lin Goshing, and this one was Lin Zhouzi. Honestly, were they really not picked up by their parents from the garbage dump or given to them as a gift? It was such a name. Because of this new idea, Jiang Pengji did not follow the previous direction. Instead, she chose a different path. Do you know where the other accomplices are? As she spoke, she took out a roll of cloth from the man's clothes. There was also a small bamboo scroll inside. The contents of the scroll were similar to the previous one. They were all women from Meng County. The only difference was that the names of these women were different. At the end of the scroll, she saw some information about Wei Yuan's residence. Not only did the man in front of him have his eyes on Wei Yuan's concubine, but he was also drooling over her two beautiful daughters. She flipped through Lu Shi's memories related to Wei Yuan's daughters, and her face darkened. Her eyes were so cold that it was as if she was looking at a dead man. She lifted her hand and removed the bamboo scroll. Then, she crushed it with her bare hands. After a while, she threw the crushed bamboo scroll on the ground and used her wooden clogs to cover it up. Following Jiang Pengji's questions, the man told her everything he knew. His expression was muddled, and white foam kept coming out of the corner of his mouth. His face turned from red to pale, and then from pale to green. His breathing was sometimes rapid and sometimes slow. Jiang Pengji knew very well that it was impossible for a normal person to survive torture in ancient times. Not only would torture bring great harm to the body, but would also cause a devastating blow to the fragile spiritual realm. Moreover, this kind of collapse was irreversible. Even in her era, when the medical development of the spiritual realm was so advanced, there were not many lucky people who could recover. There was not much time left for her to ask questions. Jiang Pengji picked out a few important ones. Chapter 113. Qiguanrang was born poor, but he had a lot of experience in the borderlands. At a young age, he already knew how to protect himself. He wandered between the various forces in the borderlands with ease. His knowledge and experience were abnormally rich. It was not something that a young man like Feng Jin, who only had theories, could compare to. At first, Feng Jin felt that this person was difficult to get along with. However, after exchanging a few words, he suddenly became interested. After a few rounds of probing, Zhang Xian felt as if he had met his match. During the conversation, the way he addressed him also changed from the distant Lang Jun to Wenjun. In ancient times, the friendship between men, especially scholars, often developed from that instant of palpitation. Underscore, when I heard what Wen Zhang said earlier, I had a guess in my heart, but I haven't been able to verify it. What is it? Qiguan Rang tapped the feather fan in his hand on his knee and said in a serious tone, Huayu, do you know the Meng family from Meng County in Song Prefecture? Feng Jin didn't understand why their conversation had anything to do with the Meng family from Meng County in Songzhou. Before he could reveal a puzzled expression, an extremely bold guess suddenly flashed in his mind, and he was so shocked that he almost lost his composure. Wenjun, how could you? Qiguan Rang smiled coldly. His eyes became even colder and gloomier. Feng Jin's doubt was within his expectations. After all, any aristocratic family would find this kind of speculation humiliating. Our ancestors were brave, and patriotic, but that doesn't mean that our descendants can inherit their legacy. He smiled coldly. The Meng family of Meng County in Song Prefecture. I heard from Huayu that you left Shangjing for some reason and didn't contact your family much. You probably haven't heard of it yet, right? Who was the Meng family from Meng County in Song Prefecture? The most famous of them all was the ancestor of the Meng family, Meng Jing, Meng Ziliang, the founding noble of the Xia dynasty. He was praised as a white dragon among men by the founder of the Xia dynasty. In later generations, he was also known as the god of war. There were ancestral halls dedicated to him in all 5 countries. With such a tyrannical ancestor, the Meng clan had been greatly favored by the emperor since the Xia dynasty. They had tens of thousands of households, which had been inherited until the end of the Xia dynasty. Even when the 5 countries were divided into Xia, the status of the Meng family was still transcendent. This was not the original name of Meng County, but because of the Meng family, it was changed to the surname Meng. Of course, just as Qiguan Rang had ridiculed, the Mengs had a powerful ancestor who had laid down an illustrious family business. However, it did not mean that the younger generation of the Mengs could be so powerful. Not only could they not push the family to the peak, but they could also become more mediocre and absurd, living off their old capital. A gentleman's grace can be severed from 5 generations. Feng Jin was not stupid. He could guess what Qiguan Rang meant. The culprit who toyed with so many women and children in Meng County and even harmed the women in Hejian County should be from the Meng family. Never heard of what? Feng Jinsu knew what kind of people her age were like, but she still couldn't believe Qiguan Rang's guess. Naturally, it's about the matter of Song Prefecture's Meng County's commandant becoming a bandit and setting fire to the prefectural governor's manor. Qiguan Rang looked at Feng Jin's face and said with a malicious tone, the county military chief is a retainer of the Mengs. He has always been loyal to the Mengs, but now he has rebelled against his former master and burned down the governor's manor. The reason for this has yet to be clarified. Coincidentally, the names of the official wife and daughter of the county military chief were written on the bamboo slips. Huayu, do you think there's a connection between the two? Feng Jin's lips moved. He was usually eloquent, but at that moment, his mind was a mess. He didn't know where to start. Say no more. There is a connection. Just as Feng Jin's mind was in a mess, Jiang Pengji's cold voice came from outside. He subconsciously turned his head, only to see that thin person stride into the room from outside, and then kneel down in a slightly rough manner. However, at this moment, no one dared to express any dissatisfaction, because her face was already about to turn ashen. She didn't dare to mention it. Oh, Qiguan Rang rubbed his feather fan on his palm. What did Lanting find out? Wei Yuan, who was at the side, became the background. Or rather, he was dumbfounded by the bombs that Qiguan Rang and Jiang Pengji threw at him. There were four noble families in Dongqing: the Feng family of Shangyang, the Wang family of Langjie, the Xie family of Longning, and the Meng family of Sangzhou. In the hearts of the people of Dongqing, although the first three families had a long history, their reputation was far from the Mengs, which had the ancestor of the god of war. Now, the two people in front of him were telling him that the bastard who made him a cuckold was most likely related to the Mengs. There was too much information. His brain was overloaded, and he couldn't wrap his head around it. According to the confession, the one who led them was a little bastard named Meng Liang. Huayu, do you have any impression of him? Feng Jin said, I do. I have a good friend named Meng Heng. He is the eldest son of the Mengs, and his second brother is Meng Liang. However, Meng Heng is polite and knows when to advance or retreat. He is a rare gentleman, which shows how his family is. How can he have such a good brother? Someone who can be friends with a rich man is naturally a rich man. Similarly, someone who can be friends with a noble family must be from a similar background. Jiang Pengji snorted. Huayu, I don't like your argument. The 9 sons of dragon are all different. Your friend is a good one, but who can guarantee that his brother is the same? Even if they were raised together, there will be differences. Feng Jin was speechless. According to the confession, Meng Liang has been a prostitute since he was young. His mother indulged him, and his father spoiled him. When he was 11 years old, all the maids and servants in the house were touched. None of them escaped. But this person likes the new and hates the old. It has become a habit for him to rape women. Although the audience in the streaming room already knew some of the inside information, they were still stunned by the valiant young man. Hongjun Laozu's Juhua. #cry. Others have been with thousands of women at the age of 11. Iron bars are ground into needles. I am still single. Guomin's husband Bio Boshan. #cry. Single +1. Are there any sisters who pity me? Zaixia Yiliankin. I, Yiliankin, am convinced. Zaixia Zhaoritian. I, Zhaoritian, am convinced too. Zaixia Long Outyin. I, Long Outyin, am convinced too. Jiang Pengji. Could the style of the streaming room be unified? At least not at such a serious moment. It almost made her laugh. Jiang Pengji coughed and calmed herself down. This Meng Liang likes to mingle with people from all walks of life. I don't know where he learned an excellent disguise technique. Because he looks feminine and looks like a woman, he looks like a pretty girl after dressing up a little. Even his closest relatives might not be able to recognize him. Using this advantage, he's like a fish in water. He has tricked many ignorant girls into letting go of their worries and suffering losses. Perhaps it was because he was too gullible and easy to trick. He felt disinterested and had other ideas. It was boring to act alone. No matter how great one's achievements were, it would become a one-man show without an audience. Chapter 114. If one walked too much at night, it was only natural that they would run into ghosts. Meng Liang had been fooling around for too long, and there were times when he would give himself away. It was a pity that the Meng family, the local tyrant in Sangzhou, was so powerful that they completely suppressed the voices of the victims. In the end, they made a false accusation, causing the victims' families to break up and die. Seeing this, the victims could only grit their teeth and endure the humiliation. With his family protecting him, Meng Liang became even more unruly when he saw that he had only been scolded a little. Eventually, he got into big trouble. That day, the military officer brought his wife and daughter to the Meng residence to celebrate the old matriarch's birthday. When Meng Liang saw his wife and daughter's beauty, he was overcome with lust and wanted to imitate them. However, the military officer's wife was not an ordinary woman and saw through his disguise. Meng Liang held a grudge against him, so he used his father, Meng Zhan's name, as an excuse to lure the captain out of the mansion. He took a few of his friends from all walks of life and took the opportunity to rape the captain's wife and daughter. The commandant's wife was still breathing, but her daughter had been raped to the point where she had lost her breath. In the end, she also went crazy and killed herself. Both mother and daughter died tragically. By the time the county commandant finished his work and returned home, it was already 3 days later. Only then did he find out that his wife and daughter had died. The Meng family concealed the cause of death and disposed of the body. Meng Liang was also restrained for a period of time. When the limelight died down, he would return to his old ways. Coincidentally, what Meng Liang had done was found out by the county commandant. Then, the county commandant set fire to the prefectural governor's manor. But how could the military strength of the county commandant compare with that of the Meng family? The commandant was quickly defeated and fled deep into the mountains, his whereabouts unknown. However, this matter was far from over. Although the incident with Meng Liang was the cause, the fact that the Meng family bullied the common people and exploited the merchants is true. It caused a lot of resentment among the people. Even though the county commandant was nowhere to be found, the civil unrest in Meng County was far from over. Meng Liang was escorted out of Tsang Prefecture's Meng County by the elders of his family. He planned to go to Shangjing to lie low. His friends from all walks of life were also afraid that the Mengs would blame them for leading Meng Liang astray, so they followed Meng Liang and left Meng County in Tsang Prefecture. Feng Jin was dumbfounded. Such an absurd thing. He thought he knew enough, but he didn't expect Meng Liang's actions to change his bottom line. No matter what, the Meng family is still the descendant of a good and loyal family. Even if they are not as strict as Duke Meng's era, they should not have raised such a maggot-like beast. The Meng family has gone too far. Wei Yuan rarely scolded people, but it was clear that he was furious. Thinking of his daughter, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That Meng Liang is a bastard, but he also loves his life. He's very cunning. In order to prevent one person from being exposed and implicating him, these people have very little contact with each other. No one knows where everyone is hiding. Therefore, even if they managed to catch one or two of them, they would not be able to catch everyone in one fell swoop. Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled. However, there is also an advantage. Wei Yuan looked at her in confusion. Things had already turned out this way. What would be good about it? On the other hand, Qiguan Rang seemed to have thought of something. A cold glint flashed across his gloomy eyes. It is indeed very good. The deeper they hid, the better. If they lost their lives without anyone knowing, the Meng family would not be able to pursue the matter. Hejian County was not Meng County, where the Meng family could control everything. It was surrounded by dense forests and mountains. It was common for a person to be eaten by a wild beast. Feng Jin understood what they meant, but he only opened his mouth and swallowed the words he wanted to say back into his stomach. Jiang Pengji only needed to achieve her goal. I have troubled you tonight. Tomorrow, I will come to your manor with gifts to apologize. I hope you can forgive my reckless behavior. Jiang Pengji looked through Lu Lanting's memories as she apologized to Wei Yuan. It was also a tactful gesture that Jiang Pengji did not want to disturb him anymore. She only needed to go home and sleep. As Jiang Pengji searched through Lu Lanting's memories, she bowed and apologized to Wei Yuan. It was getting dark, so she did not want to disturb him any longer. She wanted to go home and sleep, and she hoped that Wei Yuan would allow it. On the surface, Jiang Pengji seemed to be apologizing respectfully, but her eyes were calm. She had no intention of apologizing at all, which made Wei Yuan feel even more depressed. However, the information that had happened that night was too much for him to handle. He was a middle-aged man, and he was not as energetic as he used to be. Why would I blame you? You're doing this out of good intentions. Wei Yuan let Jiang Pengji off the hook easily, but the viewers in the streaming room were not. Now, no way. Is Master Wei Yuan just going to let go? He doesn't seem to have any intention of taking it further. What the hell is going on? Hongjun Laozu de Jua. I'm not happy. Wei Yuan is the host teacher. I thought he was a man of indomitable spirit, but it turns out to be disappointing. He doesn't deserve to be the host teacher. His concubine is being bullied. AI de Ling Ling. I'm disappointed too. He's not even as brave as the captain who set fire to the manor. He should at least say something. Zaixia Yi Liangshen. Men don't have balls. If it were me, I would beat the sh*t out of Meng Liang's head. Zaixia a long out yin. Sh*t out his head. Ha ha, brother Liang Chun, I long out yin admire you in this streaming room. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen calmly. She thought for a while and then sent a message. Host V. Although I don't like Wei Yuan's reaction, I'm sorry to tell you that his reaction is very manly. It's not that he doesn't have a decision, but it's not convenient for him to say it in front of us. Jiang Pengji's words were like dripping water from boiling oil. It instantly caused an uproar. Aoxin Qiang. Host, I'm not educated. Don't mess with me. How can he be considered a man? Jiang Pengji looked out the window, speechless. According to Lu Lanting's memory, Wei Yuan's anger was mostly because his daughter was frightened and his reputation was tarnished. It was not because his concubine had cheated on him. Why? It was because that person was cunning and seduced Wei Yuan's cheap concubine. Cheap concubine, noble concubine, legal wife. These three terms had different meanings for Dongqing men. The legal wife was the wife, the noble concubine was the concubine with some status, and the cheap concubine was a commodity that was only bought for fun. Take a chestnut, for example. If Wei Yuan's best friend came to visit and Wei Yuan asked him to stay the night, it was possible that the cheap concubine would serve him. Not to mention this, in some places where the atmosphere was more absurd, the male master would even let the pregnant cheap concubine serve the guests, or both parties would exchange cheap concubines for fun. The position of the cheap concubine in their hearts was nothing more than an object that could move. Even a clay figurine would get angry if someone touched their property without the owner's permission, but it would never reach the point where they would fight to the death. If Meng Liang had touched the county captain's concubine instead of his wife, the county captain would have been angry, but he would have tolerated it out of loyalty. _3 Angle. Under such circumstances, what weight could the cheap concubine have in Wei Yuan's heart? Wei Yuan's original intention for revenge was to seek justice for his daughter, not for the concubine. Chapter 115. We provide you with exciting novels to read. Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin had climbed over the wall, but they left openly. Wei Yuan even prepared a carriage for them. The carriage's shock absorption was not as good as the one in the Liu's, so the bumps along the way were unbearable. Feng Jin sighed. I didn't expect a gentleman like Meng Hung to have such a filthy younger brother. Why do you care if he's a gentleman or not when you're making friends? Jiang Pengji curled her lips, and her eyes shone coldly. I just feel bad for Meng Hung. Feng Jin was sensitive to other people's emotions. He knew Jiang Pengji was upset, so he explained, Lanting, I'm afraid you don't know that even though Meng Hung is the legitimate son of the Mengs, his parents don't care about him. I've been his classmate for a few years. If I didn't know he was the eldest son, I would have thought he was from a branch of the Mengs. Jiang Pengji tilted her head to look at Feng Jin. He continued, there's an assessment every 3 years. Meng Hang's family background, knowledge, personality, appearance, and ability aren't bad. However, his younger brother's behavior will have a huge impact on his moral evaluation. Dongqing's selection system was similar to the 9-rank system, but there was a big difference between the two. Family background, knowledge, personality, appearance, ability, and moral were the 6 main categories. When Dongqing was founded, knowledge, ability, and moral behavior were the top 3 categories. Family background, personality, and appearance were the bottom 3. The evaluation score was 60% of the top 3 categories, 30% of the bottom 3 categories, and 10% of the evaluation officer. The standards were not implemented for long. With the intervention of the aristocratic families, the top 3 categories became family background, moral behavior, and knowledge, and the bottom 3 became appearance, ability, and personality. The proportion of the top 3 categories increased, and the evaluation authority was strengthened. Moral behavior belonged to the top 3 categories. Because of Meng Hung, even if Meng Hung could get an excellent grade, he would become an inferior one. Feng Jin's previous reaction was not only because he couldn't believe there was such a filthy person in the world, but also because he felt sorry for his classmate. 90% of the people who could enter the general assessment were descendants of aristocratic families. The gap between them was small. Moral behavior went from excellent to inferior. How big of an impact would it have? It was enough to make Meng Hung, who was originally expected to be in the top 3, fall into the middle of the pack and fade into the crowd. What a pity, who asked him to have such a dragging brother. In this day and age, it was not popular to be responsible for one's actions alone. Meng Liang's moral integrity was questionable, which meant that the men of the Meng family were also morally questionable. The closer one was to Meng Liang, the easier it was to be implicated. It was only natural that Meng Hung would be in trouble. Why are you so worried about him? After all, he's the legitimate son of the Meng family. If the Meng family doesn't fall, he can make a comeback at any time. It's just an evaluation. What can it prove? Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes and scoffed at Feng Jin's worries. If Huayu has time to think about this, why don't you help me think about how to fool my father later? You didn't even bid farewell to me when you left the spring pavilion. What he said made so much sense that he couldn't refute a single word. The evaluation results could only affect one's initial official position, but it could not affect one's future career. No matter how much Meng Hung was not loved by his parents, he was still the eldest son of the Meng family. If he wanted to inherit the family in the future, he would have the support of the Meng family. Jiang Pengji secretly glanced at Feng Jin's expression and couldn't stop laughing in her heart. How could Dongqing not be chaotic when all the aristocratic families were messing with the court? Meng County in Song Prefecture was just a small flame. Although it was small and weak, who could say that it did not have the potential to set the prairie ablaze? Lu County Chief is not an ordinary person. How can we hide from him? Feng Jin shook his head and tried to persuade Jiang Pengji to accept her fate. Jiang Pengji snorted. Since why you said so, I have an idea. I just need to tell my father that there was a prostitute selling herself in the nearby pavilion and urged me to join in the fun. I left in a hurry and was afraid of being scolded by my father, so I didn't report it. Feng Jin's friends were dumbfounded. Was this the rhythm of throwing all the dirty water at him? Could they still be friends? Lanting, Feng Jin's cheeks were red with anger. He had never seen such a rascal. I was just joking. Huayu, do you really think I would do that? Jiang Pengji made a disappointed and sad expression. Together with the gesture of holding his heart, Feng Jin was angry, but he felt even more aggrieved when he was not angry. He had made a bad friend by mistake. Outsiders say that Lu Shi's son is unrestrained and unrestrained. What they say makes sense, Yi Futian said. It's a waste to be frivolous when you are young. If you don't be frivolous, you won't be able to be so when you are old. Jiang Pengji didn't seem to hear the ridicule in Feng Jin's words. Instead, she lectured him shamelessly. I'm not criticizing you, but you look like you have seen through the world at such a young age. You talk and act like an old scholar. Your steps are more delicate than a girl's, and your voice is gentle. He had rowed his boat all his life without oars. The corner of Feng Jin's mouth twitched. Not to be outdone, he retorted, If that girl is you, I'm indeed too delicate. Jiang Pengji was speechless. The audience in the streaming room held their melon seeds in their hands and watched the two pretty boys bicker. They all expressed that they had been forced to eat candy. Lanky Yubuja. The young Feng Jin has been bullied by the streamer for so long. He finally stood up for himself. Jinyan, you are stupid. What are you talking about? The streamer is obviously looking at the young Feng Jin's counterattack with a doting expression. Zaishai Liangshen, I'm on the streamer's side. The CP can be broken, but not reversed. The streamer will always be the aggressor. Zai Xiaolong out yin, absolutely. All the little subs who try to counterattack are paper tigers. Lao Cg Lianmeng. The streamer's childhood sweetheart is the aggressor. The CP matches with the streamer's doting smile. It's even more delicious. I see your chrysanthemum is poisonous. Heresy. The streamer's CP is me. She's a cute baby. 9 times in one night. */W***. Faced with such a toxic audience, even Jiang Pengji could only be speechless. To be honest, it was the first time Feng Jin had mentioned Jiang Pengji's gender. Huayu, there's something I don't understand. You know I'm a girl. Why are you still friends with me? Feng Jin glanced at her and said bluntly, Apart from your body, which part of you looks like a girl? She couldn't blame him for always ignoring her gender and treating her as a man. Friend or friends? Gender didn't matter. It only mattered if their temperament was compatible. Jiang Pingji looked at the screen full of ha-ha-ha and raised her eyebrows. Vulgar words. Feng Jin said, "It varies from person to person." Jiang Pingji, did this kid take the wrong medicine? Was he asking for a beating? Fortunately, Jiang Pingji was a person with a strong mentality. Feng Jin's skills couldn't affect her much. Chapter 116. Speaking of which, your temperament is similar to my younger brother's. Feng Jin raised his hand and lifted the curtain of the carriage slightly. He looked at the night sky outside and suddenly thought of something. His face was warm. Both are so mischievous and love to tease people. Jiang Pengji replied in disbelief. Teasing? I thought that your Feng family was strict and everyone was like you. Feng Jin said strangely, Lanting, didn't you say that the 9 sons of the dragon are different? Although my youngest brother and I share the same mother, our temperaments are different. He is young and intelligent, and has been doted on by his elders since he was young. Although his personality is a bit naughty, as long as he doesn't cross the line, it's fine. The direct line of descent of the Feng family had elder brother Feng Jin at the front. At the very least, there was still Feng Jin. There was no need to trouble the youngest son of the family, so he had to bear the least amount of pressure. The elders favored the eldest son, but favored and doted on the youngest son. This was a common practice in almost every family. The pitiful Feng Jin was in the middle. Although he wasn't completely ignored, he was indeed neglected compared to his eldest brother and youngest brother. Jiang Pengji glanced at Feng Jin, whose face softened at the mention of his younger brother. I really couldn't tell that you, are actually a brother complex as well. What is a younger brother complex? Feng Jin carefully pondered over this term and did not understand its meaning. Jiang Pengji explained, it refers to an elder brother who likes his younger brother very much. The relationship between brothers is very good. After Feng Jin heard this, he revealed a thoughtful expression and immediately drew inferences. This term is really novel. In that case, there are also terms like brother complex, or sister complex. That's roughly what it means. It describes the deep relationship between siblings. Yes, Jiang Pengji nodded. You are worth teaching. Feng Jin couldn't help laughing. These words are clever and interesting. They're simple but catchy. Is it the local dialect of Hajin? Jiang Pengji said with a natural expression, I heard it from a traveling merchant. I don't know where it came from. The young man pondered for a while and said with a smile, So, I could be considered a brother complex? Jiang Pengji chuckled. I know you 3 brothers have a good relationship. Next, rumors stop with the wise, and chats stop with laughter. However, Feng Jin did not understand the joke. He changed the topic and talked about other things with Jiang Pengji. Lanting, have you talked to County Chief Liu about going to Langia? Jiang Pengji was not a person who liked to stay in one place without moving. Hajin County was not small, but it was not big either. I did. Father is very supportive of me going to Langi to study, but he said that I don't need to reveal my mother's name. Jiang Pengji rested her elbows on the table and supported her chin with her right hand. Her body was tilted. Her bold and unrestrained sitting posture was an eyesore to Feng Jin. At first, he didn't understand, but after thinking about it, he vaguely understood the intention of Lu Shi's decision. Master Yuan Jing was a real famous teacher. Although he would take care of Lu Lanting for the sake of the ancients, his initial impression of Lu Lanting was not as good as his teacher. It was not as if Lu Lanting was incapable. If she could impress Master Yuan Jing with her own knowledge and talent, it would be better and more dignified than relying on her deceased mother to become Master Yuan Jing's disciple. Feng Jin asked, When do you plan to leave? Jiang Pengji had never thought about it, or rather, she did not really want to study in Langi County. About 2 or 3 months. Father has been in Hu County for many years and has rarely returned home. It's rare for him to stay home for 3 months. It would be a pity if I left to study now. I want to spend more time with him to fulfill my filial duties. Moreover, I need Master Gongsao's permission. Jiang Pengji's words were half true and half false. Jiang Pingji only said it to give Feng Jin an explanation. When parents are around, one should not travel far. Children should be filial to their parents. Lanting's way of thinking is the right thing to do. Feng Jin could not help but think of himself. If it were not for the fact that his parents were healthy and his siblings were still around, he would not have left home. If Lanting goes to Langyi in 3 months, I'm afraid you and I will have to be separated for some time. Jiang Pengji turned to him and asked, "Are you leaving Hejian County?" Feng Jin nodded and added, "But we won't be leaving in the next 2 days. As for when we leave, that will depend on 4th Lang Jun." Even though Wuma Jun was not valued by the emperor, he was still prince. Feng Jin still had to respect his decision. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and sneered. "If that's the case, you won't be able to leave Hejian County for a while." It was easier to talk to smart people. Feng Jin understood the meaning behind Jiang Pengji's words. Wuma Jun was obviously trying to win Lu Shi over to his side. He hoped that Lu Shi would support him and become a powerful bargaining chip in his fight for the position of crown prince. Hu County had become a popular place in Dongqing under Lu Shi's years of hard work. Its grain production could alleviate the food shortage in the neighboring 2 counties. In ancient times, the 2 most important bargaining chips in a war were people and grain. With grain in hand, there was nothing to worry about. If there was rice, there would naturally be manpower. To put it bluntly, if Wuma Jun really managed to get Lu Shi's full support, Wuma Jun could also recruit troops to besiege Shangjing when the emperor chose another prince. He could then drag his brother off the throne. It was a tradition in the royal family of Dongqing for brothers to fight against each other. Of course, no one knew if Wuma Jun had such ambition in the moment. But if he succeeded in winning over Lu Shi, it would be a profitable business. Since ancient times, it had been difficult to move talented people, let alone Wuma Jun, who was just an unknown prince. Lu Shi, on the other hand, was already a famous high-ranking official with real power. It was impossible to get someone with potential to work for you without putting in some effort. Therefore, Jiang Pengji concluded that Feng Jin would stay in Hejian County for a long time. Feng Jin knew what was going on. He smiled bitterly and said, "Since you already know, don't expose me." It was fine as long as the 2 of them knew each other well. It would be embarrassing if they were to expose each other. Jiang Pengji's thoughts lingered on Wuma Jun. She suddenly remembered something. "Why you? I remember you saying that you're not engaged yet." Feng Jin nodded and laughed. He guessed, "Why do you ask? Don't tell me you want to be a matchmaker." If it was someone from ancient times, he or she would not have said that. But Jiang Pengji did not have that concern. She looked at Feng Jin and said, "I do have that thought. Hua Yu is a good candidate for a husband. We should keep the goodies to ourselves." The smile on Feng Jin's face froze for a moment, and then he revealed an embarrassed expression. Chapter 117. Jiang Pengji nodded and acknowledged his guess. Father said that Madame Wei seems to have taken a liking to Wuma Jun. She wants to marry Jing Heir to him. It's not that I'm bad-mouthing people behind their backs, but Wuma Jun really isn't a good candidate. If Jing Heir really marries him, she'll suffer in the future. How can I bear to see that happen? Jiang Pengji was very patient with the cute girl. Most of the time, she cherished her. Wei Jingxian rarely interacted with Jiang Pengji, but to the original Lu Lanting, Wei Jingxian was like a sister. She was very important. Feng Jin was speechless. Even though he did not think highly of Wuma Jun's character, his evaluation of him was not as low as Jiang Pengji's. "I don't know how Masanori offended you, but you seem to hold a grudge against him. Don't you also dislike him?" Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes. "I treat Jing like a sister. Put yourself in her shoes and think about it. If it were you, would you be willing to hand your sister over to that kind of person? It's true that I don't really like him, but other than a few people, even Zhengzi himself didn't realize it. Lanting, you have good taste. To be honest, if it were me, I would be worried as well. It's just that if you entrust it to me, would you be at ease? Although I don't really care about the young talents of the younger generation in Dongqing, I can guess that you must be the ideal son-in-law in many people's eyes. I can't be wrong," Jiang Pengji said seriously. "Actually, this is just my own wishful thinking. Just as you said, The marriage of children is decided by their parents. It seems useless to talk about this here. The scenery smiled without saying a word. From his point of view, Jiang Pingji mentioning this matter was a little strange, but it was also human nature. Previously, many classmates wanted to introduce their sisters to him, but he rejected them all. Without a foothold, how could he marry and start a family? Lu Lanting treated Wei Jingxian like a family member, so it was understandable that she was anxious about her marriage. The only awkward part was, Wei Jingxian was someone else's daughter, and her parents were still alive. Feng Jin silently turned his head, but a brief image of Wei Jingxian appeared in his mind. She was indeed a quick-witted woman. However, when it came to quick-wittedness, none of the women he had met could compare to the one beside him. Unfortunately, according to County Chief Liu, he had no intention of restoring his identity. If he were to recover, that wouldn't do either. If it were to be made public, Lu Shi's reputation would be completely ruined. Feng Jin comforted her. Everyone has their own fate. You don't have to worry too much. I hope so. Jiang Pengji snorted at those words. In ancient times, there were too few reliable men, but she could not expect women to rely on themselves. It was unrealistic. To put it bluntly, she hated every aspect of this era, and women were the most inferior. While they were talking, the carriage had already stopped in front of the spring pavilion. Yes, they did not go to the Liu residence, nor did they go to the place where Feng Jin was staying. Instead, they went to the spring pavilion. It was already late at night, but the street was still brightly lit. The shadows of the people in the street looked especially fleeting under the candlelight. Jiang Pengji went straight to the private room. Lu Shi was sitting by the table with a delicate book in his hand. He was reading the book carefully with his eyes slightly lowered. The performers in the corner of the room were still singing in Wu Nong's soft voice. Wu Ma Jun sat beside him with a happy expression. It was obvious that the atmosphere between them was harmonious. There was hope for them to be friends. You're back. Lu Shi put away the book and looked up at Jiang Pengji. Did you have a good time? Not bad. Wu Ma Jun almost couldn't keep the smile on his face when he heard the suspicious conversation between the father and son. Not only did the father not blame his son for coming to the brothel to have fun, but he also looked gentle and concerned. It was rare to see that in life. It seemed that the rumor that Lu Shi valued his son was not without reason. Wu Ma Jun could not help but think that Jiang Pengji was more important to him. What Feng Jin was worried about did not happen. Otherwise, he had reason to believe that his bad friend would make him the scapegoat. If that's the case, let's go back. Lu Shi stood up and glanced at Jiang Pengji and Feng Jin. He furrowed his brows and kept a cold face. If you want to come over to listen to music in the future, remember to inform your mother first. Jiang Pengji nodded. Feng Jin was suspicious. He did not know if it was an illusion. Why did he feel that Lu Shi's attitude toward him was getting colder? Wu Ma Jun wanted to ask Lu Shi to stay, but they were in the spring pavilion, which was not a decent place. It would be ridiculous if he did that. No matter how reluctant he was, he could only watch Lu Shi leave with his son and get into the carriage. Huayu and Lu Yu's son are really close. We hit it off at first sight. Feng Jin said with a smile. It's getting late. I'll go back first. Do you still want to stay here? Wu Ma Jun shook his head. He had come to have fun and relax, but he had wanted to win Lu Shi over. Now that Lu Shi was gone, he was not in the mood to play. He might as well go back. No, I'll go back with Huayu. In the carriage, Lu Shi was reading the book carefully. Jiang Pengji could feel that he was faking his impatience. Father, ask whatever you want. You don't have to hold it in. Jiang Pengji took out some dried fruits from a hidden box in the carriage and threw some into her mouth. Since I came back, you've had doubts about me. Lu Shi did not bother to keep up the pretense. He looked conflicted. His eyes fell on a certain part of Jiang Pengji's clothes. Are you interested in Feng Huayu? Jiang Pengji said no. Why would you ask that? Anyone could see that Feng Jin saw her as a good friend, and she saw Feng Jin as a good friend and bestie. But both of you, Lu Shi's expression became even more conflicted. If the daughter was the son and Feng Jin was the woman, as her father, he could at least ask in a subtle way if the two of them had done anything improper when they went out just now. But The problem was that the person in front of him was his daughter. He could not ask that question no matter how thick-skinned he was. Lu Shi could not ask, but Jiang Pengji was not simple. She followed Lu Shi's gaze and looked at her clothes. The corners of her clothes were stained with dust. Oh, so that's what happened. She understood immediately. I didn't press Feng Jin against the wall. Father, you're thinking too much, Jiang Pengji explained with a serious face. Lu Shi was speechless. Chapter 118. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Lu Shi's lips quivered. He suddenly felt helpless about his daughter's explanation. He realized something horrifying. He subconsciously felt that his daughter had done something bad to Feng Jin. Not that Feng Jin had taken advantage of her. Perhaps, compared to his daughter's clean clothes, the dust stains on Feng Jin's clothes were more obvious. He looked like the one who had been raped and bullied. Your explanation will only make me more worried, Lu Shi said helplessly. Why didn't he just say that there was nothing wrong? Why did he have to add another sentence? It's best if there's nothing wrong. You're still young. That kind of thing is not urgent. Of course, if there's really something wrong, don't panic. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Zaisha Yiliankin, my father-in-law, is amazing. He's so open-minded. Is he really a native man from ancient times? Yubi Basin Sengwashin. The host's father is a good man of the century who was taught by the time-traveling mama. He's a national Prince Charming here, but I think he's a bit too open-minded _ smiley face 3 _. Now, I think it's normal for the host's father to have such a reaction. He's educated the host as a man through and through. He's already gotten rid of the grudge that she's a woman. Since he's a son, why would he care about those things? Kaidang Dafanani. I agree with the comment above. If the host's father still holds the host to the standards of an ancient woman, it means that he hasn't crossed the threshold in his heart. He doesn't treat the host as a real son. He still thinks of the host as a daughter and subconsciously measures the host with the standards of a woman. This is biased and disgusting. Nong Fu Shan Quan Yudiangshuan. With this explanation, I suddenly feel that the host's father has a very high level of thinking. At least if it was me, even if I raised my daughter as a son, I would still think of her as a daughter. No matter what, it's impossible for her to be like a boy. In fact, the audience in the live streaming room had overly glorified Lu Shi. Lu Shi's thinking had not reached that level yet. The reason why he was so open-minded was because, from the beginning to the end, he had viewed his daughter as the future Empress. She was the most supreme person in the world, and no one was qualified to be above her. Using the standards of women in the secular world to measure an emperor felt like scribbling on a magnificent painting and forcefully tarnishing a painting that was supposed to be passed down through the ages. It was as disgusting as eating an apple and discovering maggots in the latrine pit. Feng Jin and I went to Mr. Wei's mansion and climbed over the wall. These stains on my clothes were probably from that time. Jiang Pengji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She tried to explain so that Lu Shi wouldn't go overboard. Did she look like someone who didn't have a bottom line and wasn't serious? Although she didn't look serious, she wasn't a fickle person. In fact, her pursuit of spirituality was higher than that of ordinary people, and her standards were also stricter. She would rather have nothing than be substandard. No matter what, it was impossible for Feng Jin to be all right. Lu Shi was just about to relax when his heart skipped a beat. He asked in shock, climb Wei Gongsao's wall? In the middle of the night, his daughter was climbing the walls of Wei Yuan's house with her friends. How could he do that? That's right. Didn't I leave with the two ladies just now? I happened to meet a suspicious woman who dressed up as a woman and snuck in at Ingchun house with bad intentions. So I exposed her. I didn't expect that it would turn out to be a big deal. What big deal? Lu Shi furrowed his brows. He and Wei Yuan knew each other and were friends. He knew Wei Yuan very well. If there was no inside story, then based on Wei Yuan's personality, he would definitely not let the matter rest that his daughter had climbed over his wall. The man dressed up as a woman was from Tsang Prefecture's Meng County. They snuck into someone else's house with bad intentions. The man I caught at Ingchun house pointed to Mr. Wei's house. I was afraid that something would happen, so I went to arrest him. Lu Shi's expression softened. His daughter was doing it for the good of Wei Yuan's house. No matter how unhappy the old man was, he wouldn't target her. Instead, he would owe her a favor. And then, did you catch him? So he went to Wei Yuan's house. No wonder it took him so long. It was far from Ancient house. We've caught him, but he's brought us even more trouble. Jiang Pengji skipped over the unfortunate incident at Wei Yuan's house. It was a private matter, so she didn't want to waste her breath. According to the information, the leader of the group was from the Mengs in Song Prefecture's Meng County. Lu Shi's eyes flashed when he heard the name Mengs. The Mengs in Song Prefecture's Meng County? Yes. I heard it was caused by a man named Meng Liang. When he was in Meng County, he was lawless. He even brought people to humiliate the wife and daughter of the Meng's family, the county chief of Meng County. He forced them to become bandits. Not only did they rebel against their old master, he even burned down the county chief's mansion. Meng Liang was secretly sent away from Meng County by his family. Those people from all walks of life were also afraid of death, so they secretly followed Meng Liang, and now they came to Hejin County to create trouble. One by one, the snacks in his hand were finished. Lu Shi was dumbfounded the whole time. Such a big thing happened in Song Prefecture's Meng County. It was Jiang Pengji's turn to be dumbfounded. Father, you don't know? Lu Shi shook his head. Never heard of it. Although he had never heard of it, he felt that what Jiang Pengji said was true. Hu County, where he was appointed, was very far from Song Prefecture. The means of communication in ancient times were very backward, so the transmission of information was slow and inaccurate. He had been cooped up at home from Hu County for the past few days, so it was normal that he did not know about the news. It's okay. I'll send someone to ask about it when I get back. Lu Shi closed his eyes and tapped his right hand on his knee rhythmically. His expression was slightly stiff, as if he was enduring something. Jiang Pengji frowned when she saw his reaction. Something was wrong with his reaction. Before she could continue her analysis, Lu Shi suddenly said, Lanting, you have to learn one thing. See through it, but don't say it. Jiang Pengji averted her gaze and shifted her attention to other things, such as the audience voting. Although the interactive live stream was a little off-topic, Jiang Pengji had strolled around Yingchun House and listened to some tunes, which was in line with the theme. Not to mention that she had given the audience another good show, so the live stream was worth it. System, it's time to settle the score, Jiang Pengji said to the system in her mind. Let them vote after the settlement. The system was already a dead fish, but it was no match for Jiang Pengji in terms of patience. Chapter 119. A Genius in a Second to Remember If You Like It. System. Streamer Jiang Pengji's first full interactive streaming has ended perfectly. Dear viewers, are you satisfied? A. Satisfied. B. Average. C. Not satisfied. Before the viewers could click, Jiang Pengji quickly added another sentence, which made the system feel embarrassed and treacherous at the same time. Streamer V. The rating of your streaming experience will affect the level of the streaming room. From level 1 to level 2, the upper limit of 3,000 viewers will increase to 10,000. The higher the rating, the more beneficial it will be for the streaming room to level up. This stream is just a test. If the results are good, additional streams will be held from time to time in the future to satisfy the viewer's curiosity and experience. In other words, if you want to continue watching interesting streams and don't want to wait in line for a spot every day, the faster her streaming room can level up, the better your streaming experience will be. If you give a bad review on purpose, she will always remember it. Because of her words, a few naughty viewers who wanted to give a bad review stopped and gave a good review. System. Host, where's your face? It fell on the ground. Do you want me to pick it up for you? Jiang Pengji sneered and retorted, I'm just using all available resources. It's not against the rules. As for the face on the ground, you can pick it up and paste it on yourself. One of us is shameless and the other is thick-skinned. What a good match. What's the point of having a face? The system heard the threat and anger in Jiang Pengji's words. It sent out a string of words angrily. Sob, you're bullying me again. You weren't like this before. You don't love me anymore. Jiang Pengji smiled wickedly. I just like watching you watch me act shamelessly, but I can't do anything about it. System, why did it hate her so much? The votes from 3,000 viewers ended quickly. The system was even faster. The results came out in a few breaths. Of the 3,000 votes, 2,973 were satisfied, 26 were average, and 1 was not satisfied. Jiang Pingji didn't care about the negative review vote. She knew who voted it without looking. Bai Zhuoli. QWQ streamer, I repent. Although I know that the content of your live broadcast is very exciting, and I watch it with relish, I was really scared before. Don't be mad at me for giving you a SOSO evaluation. Black Rose. I'm shocked too, but I think the live stream is just SOSO. It's already a lot of face to give them an average rating. Take it or leave it. Then, a few people sent similar messages. It didn't seem like they were apologizing, but more like they were doing it on purpose to disgust her. Jiang Pengji's expression was the same as usual. Her heart was unmoved, or she did not care about the content at all. She did not even care about the system. How could she care about the comments of the audience who were separated by a virtual screen in a different dimension? Wouldn't that be making things difficult for him? He quickly glanced at the screen, but on the surface, it looked like his eyes were half closed, as if he was taking a nap. No one could tell what was going on. The system said, although it was your first show and you used shameless methods, the final result is still very gratifying. 3,000 votes, 2,973 satisfied. In other words, the satisfaction rate was as high as a terrifying 1%. According to the system's contract, if the satisfaction rate was 95% or above, he or she would receive a gold chest. If the satisfaction rate was 80% or above, but below 95%, he or she would receive a silver chest. If the satisfaction rate was 60% or above, but below 80%, he or she would receive a bronze chest. If the satisfaction rate was less than 60%, there would be no additional reward. Jiang Pengji's satisfaction rate was as high as 1%. Without a doubt, she would receive the highest level of gold chest. When the results came out, Jiang Pengji was slightly satisfied with the number. Host V, it's too late today. The live broadcast will end here. Good night, everyone. After that, the virtual screen suddenly turned black. The streamer's status changed from in live broadcast to running on live broadcast. She heard an electronic beep, and the system notified her that she had received a reward envelope with a gold chest inside. The system said excitedly, Host, do you want to open the chest now? Jiang Pengji secretly raised her eyebrows and said to the system, Of course I want to open it, but not now. I'll open it tomorrow. The system was originally waiting for her to show off her luck and open a level-up card in one go. When the streaming room was upgraded to level 2, the system, as a system, would also receive some benefits. But Jiang Pengji was not anxious at all. How annoying. The emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is. It's okay to wait for one night. Jiang Pengji did not know what the system was thinking, but it was as if she could see its anxious expression. She said leisurely, It's not the right time. No matter how anxious you are, it's useless. The system snorted and retorted, Host, who are you calling a eunuch? Although it was just a system, it also had human rights. It cannot be so easily trampled on. The carriage drove all the way to the Lu mansion. After Jiang Pengji bowed to Lu Shi, she went straight to her small courtyard. In another hour, the sky will be bright, but lanterns were still hung in the small courtyard. The whole small courtyard was brightly lit. The courtyard door was not locked yet. Jiang Pengji entered the courtyard and saw the two maids, Takshu and Xuanmei, leaning against the pillars. They could not hide the tiredness on their faces. They had a plain warm cloak draped over their shoulders, and their heads were nodding. They could fall asleep at any time. Jiang Pengji did not have to guess to know how long they had been waiting outside. Seeing Jiang Pengji return, Takshu and Xuanmei stood up and went forward to put the warm cloak on her. Naturally, they could smell the strong scent of makeup on her. Langjun, which fox den did you come from? Takshu, who had a bad temper, could not help but complain after entering the warm room. Xuanmei secretly stared at Takshu, indicating that she should be more obedient and not cross the line. Otherwise, based on what she said just now, she could be accused of not respecting her superiors. A light punishment would be a meal, and a heavy punishment would cost her a month's worth of silver, and she would lose her position as the head maid. Jiang Pengji answered smoothly, "Of course, I came from a nest of beautiful fox sisters." Taksha was speechless and could not continue. In terms of eloquence and shamelessness, the two were not at the same level. How could they compare? If Takshu is curious about the fox den, I will bring you there to see the world the next time I go out. Taksha glanced at Jiang Pengji. Langjun, you always make fun of me. Why would a good girl go to such a shady place? Chapter 120. A genius remembers love in a second. Get up. I didn't think it through. Ordinary women can't go to that kind of place in case something happens. So, if she wanted to go there one day, she could only go by herself. The hot soup in the loos was kept boiling all night long. Takshu and Xuanmei only had to inform them, and they would bring it over. Jiang Pengji took a good bath and washed away all the makeup and fragrance on her body. It's still early. Why don't you rest for a while? I'll wake you up when it's time. Jiang Pengji changed into her pajamas and shook her head to reject Xuanmei's suggestion. People who had a normal sleep schedule were used to staying up all night. They would definitely be sleepy, but Jiang Pengji was different. As a genetic warrior selected by the Federation, she had undergone a lot of special training, including how to get the sleep the body needed in the shortest time possible. Even an ordinary soldier of the Federation could go 3 to 5 days without sleep, let alone her. I'm not sleepy yet. Move the books in the study over. I'll read for a while. I'll pay my respects to my mother when it's daybreak. She was still awake and in good physical condition. She didn't need sleep at all. With the candlelight on the table, Jiang Pengji supported her chin with one hand and tapped the table rhythmically with the other. According to the Great Universal Geographical Map, Sangzhou was a battleground for military strategists. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. They could retreat by relying on the natural defenses. They could attack by taking advantage of the terrain, water flow, and complicated terrain. It was difficult for ordinary troops to conquer. It was also the connecting point between Dongqing and the other two countries. There were 3 natural defenses in Sangzhou: Hanqiang Pass, Zhanjiang Pass, and Yumen Pass. It was a battleground for military strategists. Apart from the natural defenses, another important reason was that the water and land routes there were quite developed. Whether it was transporting food or troops, it had advantages that other places didn't have. It could be said that if they could take down the 3 natural defenses, Hanqiang Pass, Zhanjiang Pass, and Yumen Pass, it would basically expose the hinterland of Dongqing to the enemy. There would be a flat land for strong troops to conquer. With the convenient water and land routes, the fall of Dongqing would be inevitable. Jiang Pengji frowned. She knew the importance of Sangzhou as soon as she saw the Great Universal Geographical Map. It didn't make sense that the Mangs didn't know the importance of Sangzhou. Even though he knew the importance of the matter, he still allowed Meng Liang to court death and incite the anger of the people. She did not know what to say. But then again, Meng Liang is so fearless. Isn't it because of the Meng's profound background that gives him the confidence to commit crimes? On a smaller scale, it's just a dishonorable son of a noble family provoking the people. But on a larger scale, he's courting death. Usually, the Mengs would have found a way to suppress the matter of Meng Liang and turn it into a small matter. But now, this matter was like a small flame that seemed to be going out at any time. But it could cause a series of chain reactions and eventually lead to a big fire. Unfortunately, she was now in Hejin County and did not know much about the situation in Sangzhou, so she could not make further judgments. After looking at the Great Universal Geographic Map of Dongqing for a long time, Jiang Pengji put away her things. The sky outside was completely bright. Takshu and Xuanmei led the other maids to deliver a set of toiletries on the dot. Jiang Pengji splashed her face with warm water to clear her head. Langjun, do you have any plans today? Father won't be able to get up for the time being. Ask the housekeeper to prepare the carriage. I'll go to Shangfu Temple first. I'll be back around noon. If Father asks, tell him that I went to Shamfwa Temple to visit Master Liaochen. Father will understand. If anyone from the farm comes to pass on a message, remember to write it down, and I'll deal with it when I'm back." Jiang Pengji spoke quickly like a machine gun. The system was still thinking about the gold chest. Why did the host go to Shamfwa Temple to look for that old monk? Jiang Pengji smiled mysteriously and did not give a precise answer. But the system soon knew her purpose. She climbed up thousands of steps to Shamfwa Temple. Unsurprisingly, Jiang Pengji found a monk waiting for her outside the temple. Although the old monk was a bit strange, he had some abilities that were not known to outsiders. Jiang Pengji thought that the monk must have known she was coming when she was still at the foot of the mountain. Didn't he say that her murderous aura caused the Buddha's aura in the temple to move? Liaochen was still in the meditation room. Jiang Pengji walked up to him and sat on the cushion opposite him. "I wonder what brings you here today, young benefactor?" Master Liaochen chanted the name of Buddha and twirled the prayer beads in one hand. "Master, you knew about the Ziwei Emperor's aura just by looking at my face. What else can you see today? Did she come to provoke me behind Master Lu's back?" Liaochen carefully looked at Jiang Pengji's face. Other than the fact that the Emperor's aura was thicker and more solid than before, there seemed to be no other changes. Jiang Pengji saw that he did not understand her meaning. Her fingers tapped on the table, and she had to be more direct. "How's my luck today, Master Liaochen?" Did she come all the way to see him just to ask such a useless question? The system, it seemed to understand its host's thoughts a little. Master Liaochen deliberated and said, "Looking at your face, your luck is naturally excellent. You're not affected by the evil aura, and your luck is high and vigorous. Evil creatures have brains too, okay? In actual fact, just based on the baleful aura around her that was so dense that it could not be dispersed, even if there were evil spirits, they would take the initiative to hide far away. Others were afraid of ghosts, but when it came to her, it was the worry of ghosts. Oh, thank you for your guidance, Master." Jiang Pengji clasped her hands together and made a gesture that was not very standard. Master Liaochen was dumbfounded. Even though he was a highly respected monk, he still had some doubts in his heart. What kind of scheme did this young benefactor in front of him have? In fact, it was as simple as the system guessed. Jiang Pengji only treated Master Liaochen as a human luck-testing machine. Today's luck was good, and it was suitable to draw a gold chest. The system, damn idiot. Since she was already here, she asked all the questions she needed to ask to avoid leaving a knot in her heart. "Master Liaochen, there's one thing I don't understand. Who else can see through the so-called Ziwei Emperor's aura like you?" Jiang Pengji felt that this question had to be asked clearly, in case she did not know how she was attacked. "You don't have to worry about this, young lady." Master Liaochen smiled and stroked his beard. "Earlier, I told you that one wrong thought could cut off your chances of ascending to the highest position. This is not absolute. You're not the only one who possesses the Ziwei Emperor's aura." Chapter 121. Master Liaochen nodded. Young almsgiver has quite the spiritual root. That is indeed what he meant. Although that was what he said, the person in front of him had the densest Ziwei Emperor Qi that the old monk had ever seen in his life. When Jiang Pengji heard what he said, she felt much more at ease. On the other hand, this so-called Ziwei Imperial aura was practically useless. Whether it was strong or weak, it was the person who affected it, not the other way around. No matter how rich it was, it couldn't turn a drunkard into a wise ruler. No matter how faint it was, it couldn't turn a wise gentleman into a sneaky villain. The relationship between the Ziwei Imperial aura and a person should be that the latter determined the strength of the former, not the other way around. "Young benefactor, are you worried that someone will see through this and harm you?" Master Liaochen suddenly smiled. "If that's the case, then young benefactor can rest assured. Anyone who has this kind of eyesight, if it's not someone who has an indifferent temperament, then it's someone who lives in seclusion. No matter what kind of people they were, they would not easily get involved in the changes of the world. The general trend of the world, after being united for a long time, must be separated, and after being separated for a long time, must be united. This was a process that had to be experienced, and it was not something that could be controlled by mere manpower. More importantly, to put it bluntly, there were less than 5 people in the 5 kingdoms who were at the same level as him. Dongqing alone had 6 states and 21 counties. The land area of the other 4 countries could only be larger. In addition to the vast territory of the foreign tribes, no one knew how vast this world was. How small was the probability of meeting a few people in such a vast territory? Even if he was a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse, he wouldn't run into 4 or 5 of them one after another, right? If it really happens, please forgive me. Descending the mountain was much faster than ascending it. Jiang Pengji's wooden clogs were so fast that they seemed to be flying. Soon, she arrived at the foot of the mountain where Shangfu Temple was located. All right, you can draw a chest now. Jiang Pengji entered the carriage. The coachman skillfully raised the whip and drove the horse back. The system complained about its incompetence. I really don't want to admit that you're the host. I came all the way here just to see today's luck. No matter how the system ridiculed her, Jiang Pengji remained unmoved. She opened the system mailbox and opened the golden box inside the envelope. He pressed the confirm button in the air, and the box suddenly shattered. The pieces floated in the air and slowly solidified. When the golden shimmer dissipated, a golden card the size of a poker card appeared in front of her. The system, damn it, didn't they say that the drop rate of the level-up card was extremely low? Jiang Pengji raised her hand and took the level-up card. She had a faint smile on her lips. She was not surprised by the result of the lucky draw. See, what did I say? It's red enough, right? The system, which was already a useless fish, said weakly, "Let's toast tea to the lucky king." Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily. She clamped the level-up card between her 2 fingers. She exerted a little force on her knuckles, and an option appeared in front of her. Little Angel System kindly reminds you that the host is currently a level 1 streamer. After using the card, the host will be promoted to level 2. The number of viewers in the live broadcast room will increase to 10,000. Are you sure you want to use the level-up card? Yes, Bino, does she even have to think about it? Since it was a free card, it would be a waste if she didn't use it. Jiang Pengji did not say anything else and opened the option A. There was a crisp, rustling sound in her mind. The edge of the virtual screen that was turned off exuded a light gold color, and then it went silent. System announcement. Congratulations to the host, Jiang Pengji, for officially becoming a level 2 streamer. The upper limit of the live broadcast room has been expanded to 10,000 viewers. Clusters of fireworks exploded on the virtual screen, and the originally simple and plain live broadcast interface had some light-colored patterns, which looked much better than the previous clean state. Jiang Pengji glanced at the upper limit. It had indeed increased to 10,000 viewers. System, start the live broadcast. Jiang Pengji ordered, and the system immediately responded. The live broadcast had just started, and a group of viewers rushed into the live broadcast room. Daeyong Wanwu. I was scared to death. I thought the streamer wouldn't start the broadcast today. Why is it so late today? Fortunately, I had the foresight to queue up a long time in advance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to squeeze in. Is this the streamer herself? Much better than the video. More importantly, the streamer has a high degree of recognition. The picture quality was absolutely high definition, and the host herself had a pure natural appearance. There were no special effects that focused on her face, no special effects that made it impossible to see her facial features, no flat and thick unibrow, no sharp chin that could stab a person to death, or a face with strange proportions. She was a clear stream in the world of live broadcasting. Mama doesn't have to worry about the baby's face blindness getting worse on her score. Smiley face 3 angle. Fejutsan. I heard that the streamer went to the brothel yesterday. I was heartbroken. I didn't manage to squeeze in until the end. I could only go to the Baidu forum to watch the video. I enjoyed it for a long time, and the more I watched, the more I regretted not watching. Kalele Yael. Why do I feel that the number of bullet screens today is much higher than before? You sick people, your hands are too fast. When the viewers enter the live broadcast room, They usually don't look at the number of viewers. However, the number of bullet screens on the screen is abnormal. Juju 81. Wow. Did I see it wrong? Why are there 10,000 viewers? Jiang Pengji's live broadcast room was somewhat famous in that dimension. It spread in a small circle and attracted more attention. What do the viewers who are always chasing updates complain about the most? Of course, it was not easy to get a seat in the live broadcast room. There were only 3,000 viewers, and it was impossible to get a seat if the internet speed was slow. What about now? Were their eyes playing tricks on them? Host V. This live broadcast room has officially been upgraded. It can now accommodate 10,000 viewers. *__**. Faced with Jiang Pengji's bullet screen that was suspected of acting cute, many viewers felt that the contrast was cute. The streamer's words and actions were usually cold or domineering and fierce. When did she have such a soft and cute side? However, when the two completely different styles blended together, there was a different kind of cute contrast. This caused many old viewers to make a ruckus, and the bullet screen was in a mess. Jiang Pengji rarely took the initiative to communicate with the viewers in the live broadcast room. It was the same this time. After explaining a little about the increase in the number of viewers in the live broadcast room, she returned to her usual self and sat quietly in the carriage. The coachman drove the carriage steadily and skillfully. Lu Shi slept until noon. His pajamas were wrinkled, and his long hair was a little messy. Sitting on the bed, he saw the light coming through the door. His eyes showed some confusion, but he quickly regained his clarity. Outside the room, a maid heard the movement and asked in a gentle voice, "Master, are you awake?" "Yes, I'm awake." He tidied up his appearance a little, and the maids who had been waiting outside the door for a long time filed in. The whole process was silent. Chapter 122. There weren't many masters of the Lu residence. Other than Lu Shi, the second lady, Madame Hu, and the second Lang Jun, there were only the two concubines and their sons and daughters, who rarely appeared in public. The masters had gentle temperaments and would not deliberately make the work of the servants more difficult. In addition, the rules and regulations left by the late wife were clear, so as long as the servants of the Lu mansion completed their tasks, they would have plenty of free time to rest. Tong Sanyang was on her way to the embroidery workshop to buy a new batch of embroidery thread when she passed by Corner Gate. What do you think happened in Song Prefecture in Meng County? The new purchasing manager of the Lu residence and a few people dressed like commoners were whispering at the Corner Gate. Tong Sanyang happened to hear the entire conversation. The manager was a little angry at first, but when he saw that it was Tong Sanyang, he couldn't help but put on a flattering smile. He cupped his hands and bowed. Aunt Tong. Tong Sanyang was 21 years old and unmarried. According to Dongqing's laws, she had to pay an extra tax. Her brother and sister-in-law felt embarrassed and forcefully forced her to get married. She agreed and went to plead with Madame Hu, persuading her to set up her own household. This was the first time in the entire Lu residence. She had Madame Hu's support, so the other managers didn't dare to offend her. Tong Sanyang's expression was cold. You mentioned Song Prefecture and Meng County. What's going on? The merchants who were stared at by her felt pressured. They lowered their heads and whispered, This, speak. The merchant broke out in a cold sweat and said quickly, We are traveling merchants from Meng County and Song Prefecture. Your mansion ordered a batch of goods from our master, but they were robbed by a group of refugees and bandits when they were delivered. We're here to ask for your grace to be more lenient on the deadline. We didn't mean to delay your time, but Meng County is in a mess now. Looting and burning are everywhere. They were just a group of ordinary merchants. How could they resist the robberies? Even though the Lu residence wasn't big, their food, clothing, and necessities were all exquisite. Every year, they needed to purchase a lot of goods, and they were generous. They were big customers, but the goods they sent were robbed before they could even leave Meng County. Now that they couldn't return the goods, they could only come to the Lu residence to negotiate. After hearing this, Tong Sanyang felt like she had lost her ability to speak. If something had happened in another county, she wouldn't have lost her composure like this. But the problem was That was Meng County, Song Prefecture. When did this happen? Tong Sanyang asked coldly. The commoners bowed their heads and answered honestly, but they didn't expect Tong Sanyang to sneer at them. Although Meng County in Tsang Prefecture is within Tsang Prefecture, it is not very far from Hejin County. It will only take half a month to travel between the two counties at top speed. Such a big thing happened in Meng County. Why hasn't Hejin County heard anything about it after so long? The merchants complained incessantly. They had a lot of bitterness in their hearts, but they had no place to vent it. And Tong, this incident has been known for a long time. However, the Ming army has gone too far. They don't allow refugees to enter and leave Ming County as they wish, and they also don't allow this news to spread. We wanted to transport the goods out, but we were stopped. After much difficulty, we managed to get the customs documents, but we were robbed by the mob. As they spoke of the sad part, the men were in a sorry state. The money that the Lu residents earned from the goods they ordered every year was enough for them to live on for half a year. Now that the goods were robbed by the mob, they lost their goods and money, and they almost died on the way to Hejin County. The days were like hell, and just thinking about it made them sad. If the Lu residents felt that they were wasting time and asked for compensation, then their losses would be even greater. Tong Sanyang's face turned solemn, and her palms were sweaty. She seemed to remember something. This matter is of great importance, and we need Master's attention. How about this? Let the steward take you to wash up, and I will report this to Master. If you have anything to say, you can tell Master later. When Tong Sanyang told Lu Shi about the incident, he was burning incense and practicing calligraphy. He was surrounded by a tranquil atmosphere. He put down the brush in his hand without changing his expression. If that's the case, let's ask those people to come here. He was wondering why only a few people knew about such a big incident in Meng County. It turned out that the Meng army had intentionally blocked the news. The Meng army? Huh. Lu Shi felt a flash of coldness in his heart, and a murderous look flashed across his calm eyes. How could you have such a day? Nay. The horse let out a long sigh, and the carriage slowed down until it stopped in front of the Lu residence. Jiang Pingji got out of the carriage and jumped off before the coachman could bring the bench. She saw that there was an unfamiliar carriage parked in front of the door. She frowned and asked the gatekeeper, "Is there a guest?" The gatekeeper answered respectfully, "Second Lang Jun. It's the lady's maiden family." Mother's side? Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows. "I wonder who it is." Because Lu Shi had gone to Hu County to take up his post, the women in the family rarely went out. They rarely interacted with Lu Shi's family, not to mention the second lady's maiden family in Langyi County. They would only interact with each other during festivals, but they rarely interacted with each other. Wild beasts had a strong desire to possess their own territory. They would sense the presence of a stranger. Although Jiang Pingji had not reached that level yet, along the way, there were indeed some unfamiliar traces in the Lu residence that should not have been there, which made her unhappy. Before she entered the house, she could already hear the soft and sweet voice of a young girl coming from inside. The young girl looked to be about 13 or 14 years old, wearing a pink dress. Her eyebrows were like the mountains in the distance, and her skin was like a peach blossom with a smile. Her cheeks carried a bit of baby fat, making her look even younger. Her eyes seemed to be filled with a clear spring, clear and bright. Her nose was tall and straight, and her cherry lips were red, even though they weren't dotted, causing one to be unable to help but think of the blooming peach blossoms under the spring sun. TSK, another budding lowly. "Uncle, is this Cousin Lanting?" the girl asked Lu Shi with a smile when she turned her head to see Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji did not need to look at the streaming room to know that the bullet screen was full of screams and howls. No matter which world it was, there was no shortage of good-looking people. "You're courting death. Oh, so cute." She has a clear voice and a soft body. She's a pure, natural lowly. Lao Si Julianmung. I've realized that, so far, the overall appearance of the host world is really good. There are almost no crooked people. At the very least, they have good facial features. Stop crying. It's a paradise for those who are obsessed with looks. Jiang Pengji glanced at the girl coldly. Host V, what's so cute about a stick? Everyone in the streaming room was dumbfounded. Chapter 123. What does that mean? I understand. Jiang Pengji pretended to be cold, but Lu Shi smiled. Yes, this is Lanting. He didn't want to continue the introduction. The girl seemed to realize that, and she looked embarrassed. Jiang Pengji sat down. She seemed to be looking at the tea in her cup, but she was actually sizing up the girl and Lu Shi. There was nothing much to say about the girl. She pretended to be smart, but she was full of flaws. Jiang Pengji believed that even if the girl was blind, she would still be able to smell the unbearable stench on her. What was interesting was Lu Shi's attitude. Even though the man maintained a seemingly intimate but actually distant smile and treated the guests seriously, from his eyes and the slight changes in his facial muscles, as well as the movements of his fingers, it was clear that he hated the girl very much. No, it was not enough to say that he hated her. It was more like finding the dishes on New Year's Eve filled with rotting animal corpses and other creatures' excrement. It was disgusting. The girl seemed to want to talk about Jiang Pengji, but Lu Shi steered the topic away. The two seemed to be friendly, but they talked for a long time. Finally, the girl talked about the main purpose of the visit. She wanted to see the second lady. Jiang Pengji thought Lu Shi would refuse or delay, but she didn't expect him to agree without thinking. She frowned and took the initiative to say to Lu Shi, "The doctor said that my mother is depressed, and it's not good for her to recover. I think she will be happier if she hears that someone from her family is here. You haven't been here for a long time, so I'm afraid you don't know much about the place. I'm overstepping my boundaries. I'll take you to my mother's place." Lu Shi frowned, but he didn't say anything. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Jiang Pengji caught the girl's gaze as if she had eyes on the back of her head. The girl blushed. "Lanting, the emperor is walking in front. How can you say that I'm peeking at you?" Jiang Pengji said coldly. "Oh." Everyone was dumbfounded. The viewers in the streaming room were waiting for her to gain favor with the Lolita. "Ho Dandan, streamer, you can't be like this. QWQ should communicate more with lowly girls." Zhenggang, I feel that the host's reaction is not quite right. She seems to be holding back some big move. Lao CG Lianmeng, can I say that as an old driver, I already understand the host's intention? There was something fishy about that girl. The keywords old driver and the young lady is fishy. Extended, it meant that the words Jiang Pengji had just said were meaningful. All of a sudden, all the viewers in the live streaming channel expressed. Thinking about it is terrifying. However, there were also innocent children who didn't understand and asked questions. Yigwigwangspita Jupi, why do I feel like you all understand? Can someone explain? Everyone expressed that it was rare to find a clean and pure seedling among a group of dirty old drivers. So it was better not to pollute it. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji intervened. Host V, you'll know when you're old enough. Eating grapes, spitting grape skin, eh? There were so many bullet screens, but the host saw me and even replied. I felt so honored. Jiang Pengji smiled in her heart. She didn't just pay attention to one person's bullet screen. She saw everyone's bullet screen clearly. The two of them were quite lucky. The second lady had just woken up and seemed to be in good spirits. Hearing Jiang Pengji's message, the second lady was slightly startled. She frowned and said, "Help me up." She sat in front of the dressing table and looked at her haggard face in the bronze mirror. Her expression was indifferent as she let the maid help her with her makeup. Her long hair was tied up in a bun. Because she was still sick, she didn't have many accessories on. She only wore 2 hairpins for decoration, so she didn't look too shabby. She had changed out of her wrinkled pajamas and changed into casual clothes that still had the fragrance of honey locust. With the help of the maid, she no longer looked haggard and tired. Instead, she looked more languid and elegant. That's good. Let's go see that. The second madam's tone was stiff for a moment before a beautiful smile bloomed on her face. She gave off a domineering and oppressive aura. My good niece. The second lady's strong aura was similar to the arrogant Madame Hu. For a moment, some of the inexperienced maids muttered to themselves, but they didn't dare to express their thoughts. Instead, they were even more respectful. Jiang Pengji saw the tidied-up second lady sitting in the main seat of the main room. Her eyebrows twitched. What she feared would come true. "Mother, you look much better than yesterday," Jiang Pengji said calmly. Jiang Pengji said calmly. She wanted to block the line of sight between the girl and the second lady. Unfortunately, the body she was in was that of a 12-year-old child. It had yet to fully develop, and it was almost a head shorter than the girl behind it. "And this is—" The second lady nodded and looked at Jiang Pengji lovingly. When she saw a familiar girl behind Jiang Pengji, her smile stiffened uncontrollably. She quickly regained her composure and teased Jiang Pengji with a smile. "Which family are you from? You look so beautiful and adorable. Could it be that you brought her here today because you're pleased with her?" It was Jiang Pengji's turn to be speechless. She said with a straight face, "Mother, please don't tease me anymore. I don't want to ruin her reputation. Could it be that the maidservant who notified Mother just now didn't tell Mother clearly that there's a guest at home today, and it's a cousin from Mother's maiden family?" The second lady covered her mouth with her handkerchief and chuckled. She glanced at Jiang Pengji. "You've really grown up. Can I tease you a little?" After saying that, the second lady shifted her gaze to the girl. She looked at her from head to toe without batting an eyelid. She had a familiar expression on her face. "You look very familiar. I wonder which sister you are. Why did they allow you, a girl, to come all the way to Hejian County?" The girl turned her head to look at Jiang Pengji awkwardly. She pulled her handkerchief nervously and looked at the second lady longingly. What was going on? She was hinting that it was inappropriate for an outsider like her to be present if she had something important to say to the second lady. Jiang Pengji looked at the girl's movements and eyes in silence. She sneered in her heart. She was smart enough to see through the girl's hint. However, she didn't want to follow the girl's wishes. She refused to move and didn't give her a chance to talk to the second lady alone. The atmosphere was awkward. In the end, the second lady asked Jiang Pengji to leave. Although she was sent out, her 5 senses were heightened at this moment. Even though she was 30 to 50 meters away, she could still clearly hear the conversation between the two people in the room. It wasn't that she had any ulterior motives, but she was worried about the second lady. After making sure that Jiang Pengji was far away, the second lady looked at the girl. "You've grown up." As soon as the second lady opened her mouth, the girl suddenly knelt down and kneeled in front of the second lady. Her voice was choked with emotion. "Mother, I miss you." Chapter 124. Mother? Son? The spectators were so shocked that they dropped their melon seeds. With the help of the special hidden camera angle of the streaming system, the audience in the streaming room could clearly see what was happening in the room, even if they did not have Jiang Pengji's 5 senses. They expressed that they were all scared out of their wits. "You're courting death. I'm scared to death. Could it be that the girl is the original owner of the host's body? If she wasn't the original owner of this body, why would she call the second madam mother?" At first glance, this logic seemed to be somewhat interesting. However, if one thought about it for a bit, they would know that it was nonsense. Lao Siji Lianmeng huffed. "Now is not the time to worry about this, right? Didn't you hear that sound?" Although the young man's voice was still changing, and it was difficult to distinguish whether he was male or female, if one listened carefully, one could still distinguish that there was a big difference between a male and female voice. The voice that the youth blurted out just now was clearly that of a youth, not a girl. In other words, Jiang Pengji's sh*t stir had a deeper meaning. She was really a girl. The viewers in the live stream room clutched their chests, expressing that they were hurt, feeling that they had fallen into a trap. Why would a man dress up as a girl? They could understand cosplay as a hobby, but it shouldn't be built on the basis of hurting their young hearts. Where's your sincerity? Fed to the dogs? It was as if someone had finally managed to hook up with a goddess. After going through a lot of trouble, the two of them agreed on a time, entered the room, and even took off their pants. In the end, the goddess told him that she was a man with a penis and that he could only endure it. Smiley face 3. Angle _Wanyan Lilikan. Where's the basic trust between people? What about trust? What about trust? Why do they have to hurt each other? Of course, there were also people who were gloating. Cafeteria Daff and Auntie, it's so cute. It must be blue boy paper, */W***. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Can you straighten your tongue before you speak? It didn't take me much effort to get it. I thought I would have to turn the entire Hejian County upside down. I didn't expect it to come to me. She casually plucked a leaf, wiped it clean, and held it in her mouth. She had a sloppy look on her face, without the slightest hint of elegance. The system was puzzled. What do you mean by that? Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes. Do you still remember what happened yesterday? He is the leader I'm looking for. He's Meng Liang. The system was so shocked that it typed a few exclamation marks. So he's trying to sneak into the Liu residence and cause trouble. I'm afraid that's not his main purpose for coming to the Liu mansion, Jiang Pengji said calmly. Rather than saying that he sneaked in, it's better to say that he moved in openly. His purpose is to get the Lius to help him conceal his identity. Don't forget that Meng Liang is being chased by a captain who disappeared. Maybe that captain is just hiding and following him, waiting for an opportunity to assassinate him. But how did you know he was Meng Liang? The system expressed that it had initially thought that the other party was a pure girl. Judging from her initial attitude, she should have seen through his disguise the first time they met. If it had not happened last night, the expression on Meng Liang's head would have been a man dressed as a woman with a promiscuous private life. But Jiang Pengji had already known about Meng Liang's actions. She did not kill him the moment they met, which was something to be thankful for. Jiang Pengji said lightly, with your IQ, I think it's hard to explain. The system, F***CK, Mother, I miss you. The girl, no. Meng Liang could not stop crying. In comparison, the second wife's reaction was more thought-provoking. You have your own parents to love you. Who am I? Your mother. She looked down, as if she had seen through the mortal world, but there was a hint of sadness and pity in her eyes. Meng Liang, who had been observing her in secret, saw it. Mother, are you reprimanding me for not being filial and forcing me to die? Meng Liang's eyes were red as he bit his lower lip and whispered, Mother, you're a good person. After separating from father, you got married. Did you think about my situation with brother in the Meng family? That sentence was like a sharp, snow-white knife, piercing into the second madam's heart. A fatal stab. That lowly servant girl instigated father all these years. Not only did she suppress and treat brother harshly, she also supported our son both openly and secretly. Not only did she cause dissension between our son and brother, she also intentionally turned our son into a playboy until he committed a grave mistake. What a vicious scheme to kill two birds with one stone. The second wife looked down at Meng Liang, who was kneeling on the ground and holding back his tears. She said coldly, You've seen it clearly. Mother, you have to save me this time. Meng Liang looked up, his face full of tears. If Mother did not do anything, I would not have been able to live. Mother, I beg you, you have to save me. I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to die with a bad reputation. If I die, the **TCH will not let brother go. The second wife raised her hand to her forehead. Her head was throbbing. A man doesn't cry easily. You're crying like this. What's the difference between you and a girl? That **TCH is good. She raised you into a man who is neither a man nor a woman. You don't have the noble bearing of Duke Meng. You know she's trying to kill you by flattering you. Why didn't you control yourself? Instead, you chose to indulge yourself? Her voice became stern, and she scolded him. Meng Liang looked respectful on the surface, but he was secretly clenching his fists. The second wife's heart softened. Tell me, what did you do this time? Mother, don't be angry. I didn't want this to happen. Meng Liang quickly said, Although I know she's trying to kill me by flattering me, I've been wearing this mask for too long. In the end, I can't tell who is who. I swear to you that I did not do those heartless things. That **TCH deliberately framed me. She wanted to destroy me completely to pave the way for the baby in her belly. Get to the point. The second wife's chest was heaving up and down. She seemed to be angry. Meng Liang mumbled about what happened in Song Prefecture's Meng County. However, when it came out of his mouth, he had another explanation. The death of the commandant's wife and daughter really had nothing to do with me. That was clearly a false accusation. But because of my ridiculous behavior, everyone in the Meng family believed it was true. That *TCH even hit me when I was down. Father said that he doesn't have a son anymore. He even wanted to use Rot Tan to beat me to death. If I hadn't pretended to be a maid and escaped, I'm afraid I would have been. At this point, Meng Liang's body trembled. He seemed to remember the feeling of being beaten by Rot Tan. Chapter 125. A Genius in a Second Remember to Go Away? We provide you with exciting novels to read. Wan Yin Lilikan. Listening to their conversation, I suddenly feel sorry for the boy named Meng Liang. His mother divorced his father at a young age, and he seems to have an evil stepmother. Most of the ridiculous things he did after that were led by someone else. Even if he's responsible, it's only 50%. After all, it's hard for a child to survive without his mother's protection in ancient times. Cafeteria Daphne. Seeing him cry so pitifully makes my heart ache. He was almost beaten to death by his father, and he had to disguise himself as a woman to escape. After escaping, he took the blame and was chased by some military officer. He's still young, just a kid. People with good looks were always more likely to receive preferential treatment. After learning about Meng Liang's tragic experience, a large number of viewers in the streaming room switched sides and expressed their sympathy for the boy. Of course, there were also a small number of viewers who disagreed with the sentiment. Tudu Fatio, _ smiley face, 3, angle, _ although I was also shaken, the host didn't seem to have any reaction. I even felt that the smile on her face was a little sarcastic. Based on my trust in the host's intelligence, I felt that Meng Liang didn't deserve any sympathy. Lanky Yubuz, I agree. If I don't want to be slapped in the face by the plot twist, I'd better take the host's side. Jiang Pengji held a leaf in her mouth, multitasking. She watched the bullet screen while paying attention to the touching meeting between the mother and son in the room. At the same time, a bunch of data about the second lady flashed in her mind, slowly forming a clear outline. Up until the end of the mother and son conversation, what Jiang Pengji was worried about didn't happen. Meng Liang behaved the whole time. That night, when the second lady came out to have dinner with her family, Madame Hu said that she wasn't feeling well. The two of them were like kings who didn't see each other. Jiang Pengji followed the rule of not talking during meals and finished a portion of food for 3 people. She forgot to mention that when a maid served her, the rice in the bowl was compacted and the meat and vegetable dishes were plentiful. Maybe it was more than 3 people's portions? Thinking about how the others ate like cats, she felt that she probably ate 4 or 5 people's portions. Although Meng Liang was the second lady's son, he was still considered an outsider in the Lu Manor and couldn't stay in the inner court for too long. Father. Jiang Pengji sat in front of the desk and practiced her handwriting. It was better to have someone to teach her. At least her handwriting had improved a lot. Lu, she grunted in response. She put down her pen and asked seriously, that Meng Liang, is he really Mother's biological son? Lu Shi's eyes flashed with a hint of playfulness and helplessness. Nominally, that should be the case. On the other hand, it isn't. Jiang Pengji asked. Lu Shi was choked by the rhetorical question, but he didn't want to reveal everything so quickly. He still wanted to struggle. Yes or no? What's the difference between the two? If it is, leave his corpse intact and give him the last bit of dignity. If it isn't, he will naturally die without a complete corpse. Leaving him alive is just a waste of food. Jiang Pengji wouldn't take the initiative to poke her nose into other people's business, but it was a different story if someone took the initiative to bump into her. Lu Shi focused on the former and asked in disbelief, if Meng Liang was really your aunt's son, why would you think that I wouldn't? Jiang Pengji looked at him in confusion. Does it have anything to do with family? Lu Shi was stumped by the question. Legally, it didn't have anything to do with the family, but what about the family? Jiang Pingji took a sip of tea to moisten her tongue. What you said just now also shows that Meng Liang isn't. It's impossible to argue with a non-existent hypothesis over an impossible question. She felt like she had nothing better to do. Lu Shi couldn't help but blush when he heard what she didn't finish. Meng Liang did evil, so someone will punish him. Even if Meng Liang did deserve to die, he didn't understand why his daughter was so eager to kill him. For justice? First of all, Meng Liang is a child of the Mengs. He is loved by his parents and elders. Look at how much trouble he caused in Tsang Prefecture. How did the Mengs deal with him? He was secretly sent out of Tsang Prefecture to seek protection in Shanjing. In other words, Meng Liang is someone the Mengs must protect. The government still has to rely on the Mengs' reputation, and the Mengs also need to guard Tsang Prefecture. So how could Meng Liang die? Meng Liang escaped from Tsang Prefecture and even had the mood to harm the girls in Hejian County. How is he in danger? As for seeking protection from the Lus, half of the reason was that he was being hunted by the county military officer. With Lu Shi's influence in Hejian County, the county military officer couldn't do anything to him, so Meng Liang could rest easy. The other reason was that he had his eyes on the women of the Lus. Lu Shi had to admit that what Jiang Pengji said was true, but he didn't think it was a reason for her to want Meng Liang's life. I don't want to hear these high-sounding reasons. Tell me what's on your mind. There are 3 reasons. First, a cockroach jumped into my house. Can't I slap it to death? Second, Meng Liang entered the house under the guise of my mother's daughter. That identity can save his life, but it can also kill him. It's a good opportunity, and I don't want to miss it. Even if someone died, it would be the second lady's niece. What did it have to do with Meng Liang? What's the third reason? Lu Shi thought that was her reason. Meng Liang is useless, but it's worth it to use his life to buy people's hearts. Jiang Pengji smiled. The corners of her eyes turned up as she smiled, which made her look more cunning. Lu Shi sat where he was in silence. Buy people's hearts? For that county military officer? Ha! It was a good deal. But Dongqing hadn't been destroyed yet. Was it a good idea for his daughter to cause trouble so early? Lu Shi had misunderstood. Was Jiang Pengji the kind of person who wanted to see the world in chaos and cause trouble everywhere? She admired the county captain. He was a courageous man. Coincidentally, Meng Liang was in her hands. Coincidentally, the troop that she was training was lacking a courageous leader. So, why not have the best of both worlds? Save the county captain, get rid of Meng Liang, and find an alpha wolf for the troop? As the saying goes, a good leader can change the atmosphere of an army. The county military officer had led troops in Tsang Prefecture's Meng County. Even though she didn't know how capable he was, he could betray his former master, set fire to the governor's manor, and escape unscathed. TSK. If the Mengs didn't value him, she would put him in an important position. Together with Su Ku, one was in charge of external affairs, and the other was in charge of internal affairs. It was a perfect match. As for whether or not the other party was willing to submit, it was not a problem for him to go from a county military officer to a small leader of a small troop. Chapter 126. The system said, "So you plan to use Meng Liang's life in exchange for his loyalty? Have you asked for Meng Liang's opinion before doing so?" Jiang Pengji snorted and asked the system, "Do I need to ask for the opinion of a prisoner who has been deprived of all his rights?" The system said, "You want to go to heaven?" Jiang Pengji laughed and rolled her eyes. "I've never come down from heaven." The system was speechless. Could she be any more shameless than that? The system was not the only one who thought that Jiang Pengji wanted to go to heaven. Even Lu Shi felt the same way. At a time like this, shouldn't a normal person be thinking about how to get rid of the hot potato that was Meng Liang? Or should they be preparing to protect themselves so that they wouldn't get revenge because of Meng Liang? But what about Jiang Pengji? Her first reaction was to use Meng Liang as a favor to win him over. Could it be that this was the main reason why she could become the Taizu of the Jiang dynasty in the future, and why all her opponents who competed with her for supremacy were either killed or imprisoned forever, and almost none of them could die of old age. To be honest, for the first time, Lu Shi felt the pressure on his shoulders. Father, you don't agree? Jiang Pengji frowned when she saw Lu Shi's silence. She recalled the conversation and felt that she had overlooked something. It's not that I'm against it. From the bottom of my heart, I support it. But, Lanting, don't you think you're being too cold? It's just a silly assumption. But if it's true, then Meng Liang is your stepmother's son. Have you thought about how sad your stepmother will be when you say you want to kill Meng Liang with your own hands? Lu Shi wanted to be tactful, but the words that came out of his mouth were too direct. Your mother treats you well. Can you bear to kill her son in return? Jiang Pengji looked down. Lu Shi's question was indeed something she had overlooked. Or rather, she had never cared about it. In ancient times, people were particular about bloodlines, but Jiang Pengji had never had such an impression. She was an orphan from the Federal War. Her parents' dates of birth and death were unknown. She had no memory of them at all. It was not that she did not remember them, but her memory had been erased. This was something that almost every genetic warrior would experience. Genetic warriors were a combat force secretly nurtured by the Federation. They were born for the sake of victory. As long as they were absolutely loyal, the rest of their memories would only be a burden. Before being nurtured, those memories were not allowed to exist. This was also to screen out the possible existence of spies. However, Jiang Pengji was probably an anomaly because her memory had not been completely erased. She vaguely remembered some old things. Of course, those past events were not pleasant memories for a 3-year-old child. I have indeed neglected this point. However, even if I have misgivings, so what? Out of respect for my mother, I'll turn a blind eye to it, allow a disgusting insect to strut around in front of me, and then continue to do dirty things to the women in the residence? In my opinion, this kind of conflict is meaningless. If mother blames me for Meng Liang's death, Jiang Pengji paused and smiled. Father, you've reminded me. If Meng Liang is to die, he should die by someone else's hand. Lu Shi was speechless. What she said seemed to make sense. Regardless of whether she was conflicted or not, the result would be Meng Liang's death. So, why was she conflicted? She expressed her struggle through her rich and painful inner thoughts. She expressed that she cared about the second lady's feelings, and then she continued to do what she had to do after the pain. Meng Liang still had to die. From Jiang Pengji's point of view, it was no different from taking off one's pants and farting. After a long time, Lu Shi let out a long sigh. If your mother heard this, I don't know how heartbroken she would be. Yes, she would be heartbroken, not sad. Jiang Pengji did not know that the mother Lu Shi was talking about was not the second lady. But Gumin had once told Lu Shi that, according to historical research, the Emperor Chun of the Jiang dynasty had a very serious emotional disorder. It was a very serious mental illness, so serious that it caused political turmoil. In other words, his daughter had already started to get sick, but it was not as serious as it seemed. Thinking about this, Lu Shi's other emotions gave way to the heartache in his heart. He was secretly glad that it was better to find out sooner than later. The sooner he could see the doctor and take the medicine, the sooner he could recover. He raised his hand and stroked Jiang Pengji's hair. It's okay. Let the doctor come and take a look. You can't hide your illness for fear of treatment. What kind of illness was mental illness? Lu Shi did not understand because he was not a doctor. That kind of problem should be solved by professionals. Jiang Pengji was speechless. She had thought that it would create a rift between her and Lu Shi, or that he would be wary of her, but things did not go according to plan. Lu Shi reminded her, Meng Liang is indeed a fake, but your mother does have a son. He is Meng Liang's brother, Meng Heng. If you meet him in the future, don't fight and get along with him. He's a talented person. Was he hinting for her to poach him? Jiang Pengji thought expressionlessly. If Meng Liang is not my mother's son, why would he do that? Even if he was a fake, he should be pretending to be Meng Heng, not Meng Liang. It's a long story. The grudges of the previous generation are all about the private affairs in the backyard. Lu Shi looked worried when he mentioned it, but he did not hide it from Jiang Pengji. You're not young anymore. It's good to hear about it. Otherwise, You will be deceived in the future." Jiang Pengji was speechless. Wait a minute. There seems to be something wrong with these words. Lucy continued. He changed the way he addressed her to distinguish Gu Min from his second wife. When your aunt was still a virgin, her name was Gu Zhen. Although she was a daughter of a concubine, she was very close to Gu Min. She was like a mother to Gu Min, so she was not much different from a legitimate daughter. When she was 15 years old, she was engaged to Meng Zhan of the Mengs. But most men in the world like the new and hate the old, and few are devoted. Meng Zhan, I was wrong. I didn't expect him to be a beast in human skin. Jiang Pengji listened carefully and frowned. Is the Meng Zhan you mentioned the current chief of Meng Prefecture? The man who connived with Meng Liang, forced his men to betray him, and burned down the chief's manor? That was incredible. Lucy looked disgusted when he mentioned it. Yes. Chapter 127. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. How did the second lady know that Meng Liang wasn't her son? It was simple. She tried her best to give birth to the child. She heard people say that the cinnabar mole between her husband's eyebrows was beautiful and that he was blessed. But when she woke up, she found that her son didn't have a cinnabar mole between his eyebrows. He was born weak and small. 2 days later, she heard that Meng Zhan's concubine had given birth to a child who died prematurely. Because the child died prematurely, it was buried hastily. Also, the child had a mole between his eyebrows. The second lady was suspicious. She tried to ask Meng Zhan about it, to see his reaction. However, the relationship between them had been broken for a long time. Meng Zhan always yelled at her and humiliated her. He didn't care about her dignity as the matriarch of the family. He helped his concubines torture her. The second lady's body quickly deteriorated due to the oppressive life and the lack of care after the birth. But this violent life was just the beginning. Meng Zhan believed that the second son she gave birth to was the son of adultery. He hated her to the core. How could he let her stay in his yard so comfortably? But if he killed her, he thought it would be too easy on her. 5 or 6 years of torture was enough to turn a beautiful lady into a woman with sunken eyes. She was as skinny as a stick. She looked like neither a human nor a ghost. Meng Zhan didn't want to kill her, but it was better to stab her than to torture her with a blunt knife. In the first 2 years, Meng Zhan and your aunt had a good relationship. There were some conflicts, but nothing serious. I went to Meng County with Gu Min to visit your aunt a few times. Not long after, your eldest brother passed away. Gu Min's health was getting worse. The two families had less contact. It was my fault for trusting Meng Zhan too much. I didn't realize that the things we used to communicate with each other were not prepared by your aunt. Gu Min's body got better after she gave birth to twins. When she started to manage the account books again, she realized that there was something wrong with the communication between the Lu's and Meng Zhan's. Gu Min, who was always smart, noticed something was wrong. She tried to send invitations to the Mengs a few times. Of course, none of the invitations reached Gu Zhen. They were like stones in the ocean. The Mengs of Sangzhou are so powerful. No matter if I visited your residence or sent an invitation, I was unable to see your aunt. At that time, Lu Shi felt that his wife was overthinking things. He and Meng Zhan were classmates and close friends. They were also brothers-in-law. Gu Zhen was in Meng Zhan's backyard. What could possibly happen? In the end, he was slapped in the face. Gu Min couldn't find out what had happened in the backyard of the Meng's residence, but she could start from other places. Finally, after much difficulty, he managed to find the maidservant who had once served Gu Zhen. Only then did he manage to get some information from her. Meng Zhan seemed to be extremely dissatisfied with Gu Zhen occupying the position of his wife. He wanted her to abdicate. Of course, none of the women who had entered the Meng's residence could leave. Regardless of whether they lived or died, they had to belong to the Mengs. Amin heard from the maid that Meng Zhan's favorite concubine had threatened to turn your aunt into a human swine. At that time, she didn't think about anything and directly went to the door to ask for your aunt. If it weren't for my vigilance, I might not have been able to escape unscathed. Jiang Pengji pursed her lips. How dare you be so arrogant? Lu Shi sneered. His eyes were full of sarcasm. That's arrogant. Gu Min had forced herself to go to the door and take away the wife of a noble family. She had even let all the children of the Mangs see Gu Zhan's grotesque appearance. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell how heartless Meng Zhan was. He had tortured the wife of a noble family to such an extent. The whole Mangs had been humiliated. Gu Min was so angry that she asked Lu Shi to write a letter of separation for Gu Zhan in a fit of rage. As for whether to persuade them to separate or not, well, Gu Min wasn't a sister who couldn't afford a divorce. What right did she have to make her sister compromise and be abused as a maidservant? Of course, with the power of the Mangs, the scandal didn't spread, but the hatred had been formed. Your aunt already knew that Meng Liang, who was the second son of the Mangs, was not her biological son. He was the son of a concubine. However, the Mengs didn't seem to know that. Meng Liang thought she didn't know either. Otherwise, why would he walk in a trap? At this point, Lu Shi suddenly showed a trace of a smile. Jiang Pengji smiled helplessly. My mother is just being naughty. How did it feel to hear the son of one's enemy call one's mother and call his own mother a lowly servant in front of one's face? It did relieve some of my anger, but more than that, it was suffocating. Lu Shi sighed. The Mengs were powerful. They wanted to take her back and punish her many times. At first, Gu Min was strong enough to protect her, but then Gu Min passed away. My position as a father became a bit awkward. One was a divorcee, and the other was a widower who had lost his wife. The latter always protected the former. As time went by, there were all kinds of ugly words. Later, due to various considerations, Lu Shi finally agreed to remarry. His wife was Gu Zhan. Even so, she has been living in fear all these years. She is sensitive and thinks too much. How can she recover? Because of her eldest son, Meng Heng, Jiang Pengji said with certainty. Lu Shi nodded. She lost her second son, but her eldest son is still in the Mangs. I thought that even though Meng Zhan is despicable, even a vicious tiger would not eat its own cubs. I didn't expect that your aunt would take it to heart, and her health became worse. The second lady's life in the Lus was not good, so her eldest son could be less tortured in the Mangs. So, that's why my mother pretended not to know the truth when she saw Meng Heng. Yes, it was indeed frustrating. Lu Shi sneered. She was born in the wild. The Mengs of Sangzhou are just a joke. At the same time, the audience in the streaming room exploded. Sleeping Sang was Xiangshan, watching the whole story. Women in ancient times had a hard life. The second lady was born in a good family, but her husband's family was so powerful. They wanted to torture her, but she couldn't even fight back. Yanling Shi. How is this just being powerful? He was simply a local tyrant. He could come and go as he pleased. So what if one wife died? There were still millions of other wives waiting to marry into his family. Jiaoting. It seems like the girls in our era are happier. At least they can get a divorce. Not like here, where divorce is fatal. You might even be dragged back into the pond. It's scary. Huaxia Da Ji. Maybe it's just an extreme case? I watched the streaming. The host was riding in a carriage, and there were young women on the road. It shows that the social mores are not that restrictive to women. There are all kinds of birds in a big forest. The Meng seem to have a high social status. It's not an exaggeration to call them local tyrants. They have power and the right to do whatever they want. Sans his song Shu, snacking. Social productivity determines social status. Even if the social mores are open now, they will be closed sooner or later. It's an unchangeable historical trend. Women's status will only get lower with men's demands. Jiang Pengji was lost in thought as she read the bullet screen. Chapter 128. The internet provides you with wonderful novels to read. If she had died in battle, she would have had peace. But who would have thought that she would have a second life? Jiang Pengji had no sense of belonging to this world. Her life was forced upon her by the system without her consent. But since she was alive, she would not seek death. The federal soldiers could die however they wanted, but they could not commit suicide or lose their will to live. That was the behavior of coward. So she chose to live well. She treated it as a retreat from the battlefield and a leisurely vacation. Which one of the vacations did not pursue a happy mood? If they did not like it, they would either completely destroy it or change it into something they liked. Why force themselves to get used to it? The world should change for me, not the other way around. Don't you think so, system? Jiang Pengji asked with a smile. The system was silent for a while, then complained, "Isn't it enough for you to go to heaven? Do you want to pierce the sky? If you have the ability to show off, come down here if you have the ability. The sky is not paper. How can it be pierced?" Jiang Pengji pretended not to know and refuted the system. She liked to see the system stomp its feet and complain. It was so cute that it could not do anything about her behavior. The system endured the pain and said, "That's enough. If I talk to you again, I will have a heart attack and go back to the furnace to be reborn." Jiang Pengji had a faint smile on her lips. She looked at the waterside pavilion in the courtyard. No one knew what she was thinking. Night fell. The hustle and bustle of the day subsided. The quiet night shrouded the land. The second lady rested in peace for a few days. She looked a little better. However, she had been sick for many years. Even with the continuous supply of good medicine, she did not know when she would be able to recover the vitality she had lost. She gritted her teeth and saw her son in name. The second lady's mood fluctuated greatly. Her eyes were full of malice. Her mood fluctuated too much. When she returned to her bedroom, she naturally became even more ill. The maid hurriedly called for a doctor. "You still don't like to drink medicine. Eat some candied plums." Lu Shi entered the room and saw her covering her mouth in disgust. He could not help but be speechless. He took the box of candied plums from the maid. The second madam took it and said in a low voice, "Brother-in-law knows me best. He knows that I don't like to drink those bitter medicines. It doesn't matter how much you know. You still have to drink. Otherwise, how can you take care of your body?" Lu Shi smiled. "Don't eat too much. You'll get sore teeth. Brother-in-law has always been someone who doesn't come to the temple for no reason. Since you suddenly came to my place today, you must have something to tell me." The second lady didn't listen to his advice. Instead, she stuffed the candied plums into her mouth one after another. Only then did she suppress the bitter taste in her mouth. "Just say it." Lu Shi couldn't help but sigh. Although they were husband and wife in name, they did not have a physical relationship. Rather than husband and wife, they were more like brother and sister. Every time he saw the second madam, he would suddenly think that she was still the naive and clingy girl who liked to pester him in. However, it was different now. Lu Shi, who had always been calm and steady, couldn't help but feel his hands itch when he thought of the culprit who had caused her to become like this. The Meng family is in trouble. Meng Zhan's county governor's office was burned and Meng County is filled with rioters. The Meng family's army is afraid that the news will be leaked. Instead of appeasing the people, they try to suppress them with blood. This is making the people even more angry. If you want to step on them, this is the perfect opportunity. The second madam was stunned when she heard the news. Then, she burst into laughter. Tears of laughter rolled down her cheeks. "I was wondering. I thought the family couldn't bear to see me living a good life and purposely came to humiliate me. I didn't expect it to be like this." The second madam laughed so hard that tears were rolling down her cheeks. Lu Shi's heart ached when he saw her. All sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. He didn't feel good at all. "Brother-in-law, didn't you say that you'd rather tear down a temple than ruin a marriage?" Lu Shi shook his head. "You hold a grudge? What did you say that? Before Min left, the person she let down the most was you. I also owed you a lot. You're my wife's sister and my wife in name. If I don't protect you, am I supposed to protect Meng Zhan? He married her, but he couldn't fulfill his obligations. He made her live like a widow. That was his fault. Lu Shi would always remember his mistakes." The second madam lowered her head with a smile. "Brother-in-law, you made me feel ashamed. If you hadn't taken me in, I wouldn't have become the madam of the Lu family. If we're talking about owing something, it's naturally me who owes you and brother-in-law. After all, this position belongs to my sister." Even if Lu Shi hadn't taken her in, no one would have dared to say anything. Lu Shi didn't owe her anything. Marrying her had caused Lu Shi a lot of trouble for no reason. His wife had died, and he had married his wife's sister. She had been divorced, and her reputation had been ruined. People who didn't know the truth wouldn't think too much. The Meng family had slandered her and accused her of having an affair with Lu Shi. She didn't even dare to think about those days. Lu Shi smiled bitterly. Was he really not responsible? Meng Zhan was his classmate and good friend. He was also a descendant of a loyal family. His ancestor was famous. He was the Xia dynasty's god of war, Meng Jing. Compared to the other candidates, Lu Shi naturally favored his classmate more. He was confident that he understood Meng Zhan and felt that he would be a good man. However, the result was a slap in the face. If he hadn't been blind to pick on Min's brother-in-law, there wouldn't have been so much trouble. The second madam seemed to understand Lu Shi's thoughts. She sighed and said, "If not for sister's pity, I would have been tortured to death by those servants long ago. Although I have a biological father, it is better than not having one. My deceased mother's status is low. Who in the Gu residence cares about me? Only sister is kind and benevolent." Gumin was only a few years older than her, but she always felt like her sister had raised her. If not for sister saving me from the well back then, would there be the Gu Zhan of today? The first madam did not care about Gu Zhan's marriage. It was her married sister who helped her pick a good husband in private. She screened those talented and virtuous men carefully. They were all good husband candidates. However, Gu Zhan was blind and chose the worst one. If she had not been stubborn and rebellious back then, and had married the man her sister had painstakingly picked, her life now would be so comfortable that those noble ladies would die of envy. However, her life now was pretty good. The second madam looked down and curled her lips up slightly. She would be content with what she had. She would take good care of her sister's only child in this world. She would enjoy the blessings that her sister could not. Now, she could recuperate in peace. The real good days were yet to come. As for Meng Zhan, it was as her sister said, "Take revenge if you have a grudge, and take revenge if you have a grudge." Humans only live for a few decades. If you can be stubborn, why let yourself be sullen? Every dog has its day. There will be a day when Meng Zhan will kneel at my feet like a stray dog, as lowly as an ant. Chapter 129. The humiliation she had suffered in the backyard of the Meng family, the nightmare she had endured, and the pain of losing her son would all be repaid by the culprit 1,000 times over. Not only that, but he also had to avenge his sister. She knew her sister very well, and her brother-in-law treated her very well, unlike her who was tortured in the Meng residence. How could she have a shorter life than her? Lu Shi sighed softly. He had no temper with his deceased wife's stepsister. "You don't have to mess with Meng Zhan because of me. It's not that I don't work hard, but I don't want you to dirty your hand for someone like that." The second lady's eyes flashed with anger. "What does he have to make you worry about him? But if we miss this opportunity, I'm afraid that given the resources of the Meng clan, it will be difficult to shake them." The second lady snorted coldly and glanced at Lu Shi. "Brother-in-law has always been ruthless. Why are you pretending to be ignorant now?" Lu Shi was speechless. Could he say black-hearted and vicious was not a good word? They really were sisters. Praising someone was like scolding someone. Opportunities don't come often, but it's not like there won't be a next time. When killing an enemy, the most taboo was not to kill with one strike. If my brother-in-law trampled on the Mengs this time, it wouldn't hurt at all. Instead, it would incite their hatred and bring trouble to our doorstep. Brother-in-law has been operating in Hu County for many years, and it is not easy to get such a good position. If we lose it because of this, it will not be worth it. If I'm going to fight, I naturally have to kill him in one strike." The second madam smiled coldly. She had endured those years of living a life worse than death. She could afford to wait a few more years. Lu Shi stared at her for a long time and heaved a sigh of relief. "It's great that you can think that way." The second madam glanced at him and said angrily, "Does brother-in-law think that when is an ignorant girl?" "I'm just worried that you'll take things too hard," Lu Shi muttered. Although she had married the man in front of her and given her a place of protection, she was stubborn and opinionated. She knew that the Meng family would not let it go so easily. In order to prevent the Meng family from implicating her further, she refused to cooperate with them. She did not take the medical officer's advice to heart. She was delaying her illness, torturing herself, and refusing to receive proper treatment. How could Lu Shi's heart bear it? Now that Gu Zhen was willing to let go, he felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his heart. If she continued to be stubborn, as her brother-in-law, there was nothing he could do. It's good that you've thought it through. Recuperate well. As long as you get better soon, I'll provide you with delicacies every day. Of course. When have I ever been polite to brother-in-law? The second madam snorted and asked, let's not talk about this first. Have you thought about how to deal with Meng Liang? How dare he openly claim the title of my son? Is he worthy of that with his background? Lu Shi thought about it carefully. Jiang Pengji's words appeared in his mind, and he revealed a little. Every wrong has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Why are you dragging an innocent child into this? Lu Shi's first sentence made the second madam's face darken, but the second half of his sentence lightened up. Moreover, your brother-in-law is the chief of the county. I can't do anything to a child. The second madam was smart, or else Meng Zhan would not have fallen in love with her at first sight. The Mengs were a prestigious family in Dongqing, and Meng Zhan's wife was at least the daughter of an aristocratic family. Even though the second madam was later recognized as the daughter of the first wife, her status was still much lower. Lu Shi's words were vague, but as smart as she was, she immediately understood what he was hinting at. With Lu Shi's current status, it was indeed embarrassing for him to make a move on a junior, but it shouldn't be a problem for his children, right? However, the Mengs were still deeply rooted in Dongqing, and they could not be easily shaken. If he wanted to do anything to Meng Liang, he could not drag the Lus into it, lest the furious Mengs pursue the matter. It was not worth alerting the enemy now. In a few words, Meng Liang's situation had become extremely dangerous, but Lu Shi did not have the slightest premonition of impending danger. Just like what Mother said, the Lus are a pile of mud that can't be helped. Look, I can see the fire in Lu Zhongqing's eyes, but he has to suppress his anger. He doesn't dare to touch me. He is such a coward, but Father still thinks he is powerful and fears him everywhere. The girl, who was originally beautiful and charming, was lying on the comfortable bed. She tilted her head and saw the neatly arranged clothes on the side. She casually picked them up with her fingers and snorted in disgust, as if she was holding something dirty in her hand. This is so shabby. This kind of lousy material is only worn by the servants in the manor. Lu Zhongqing actually sent it here to humiliate me. She followed Meng Liang into the manor, and the manservant who was pretending to be a maid hurried forward to stop Meng Liang from throwing the clothes out. She kept muttering, "My Lang Jun, you are wandering outside, so of course you are not as good as in the manor. Although this kind of material is shabby, it only became popular 3 years ago in Shangjing. Hejian is a poor and remote place. I heard that some gentry families can't even keep their basic decency. It's already good enough to have clothes to cover their bodies. Lang Jun, just bear with it for a while. When a matter blows over, Master and Madam will come to take you back." Meng Liang secretly gritted his teeth in anger, but he had to admit that what the manservant said made sense. It was not the time to be picky. If it weren't for Meng Han, I wouldn't have to suffer like this. Hearing what the manservant said, Meng Liang suddenly became angry. He is just a lowly servant of the Mengs. How dare he throw a tantrum and make Father so angry? The manservant echoed. That's right. Meng Han is just like his name. He is a stupid person. Lang Jun, you don't have to be angry with him. When the Meng's army kills all the rebels, Meng Han will fall into your hands. Meng Han was the powerful man who burned down the county governor's mansion. He used to be a servant of the Mengs and had climbed to the position of the county governor with great effort. If it were in the early days of the Xia dynasty, Meng Han wouldn't dare to say anything even if all the women in his family came to serve him, let alone his wife. But now, he really thinks that the Mengs are so weak that he even dares to bully a little servant. I'm so angry. The manservant's words did make Meng Liang's anger dissipate, but he still felt an unspeakable humiliation. Yesterday, he and the manservant had sneaked out and accidentally saw Meng Hun sneaking into Hejin County. They were almost scared out of their wits. If he had known that Meng Hun would be so persistent, he wouldn't have been so willful. He wouldn't have ditched his guards and followed his friends here. Damn it! Thinking of the little girl he should have gotten earlier, and then thinking of the current situation, he couldn't help but feel pain in his chest. But the manservant also reminded him that they should hide in Lu Shi's mansion for the time being. They would contact the guards and servants when they settled down. When there was someone protecting him, Meng Liang was naturally not afraid of Meng Hun. Meng Hun could be killed by a random knife. Chapter 130. Young master, don't be angry. It's not worth it to harm your health. At that time, Madame will be distressed, and I will also feel uncomfortable. Meng Liang's temperament was eccentric and his methods were insidious. Countless servants and maids have been killed by him. Only the one by his side was perceptive. Her ability to take advantage of the situation and flatter others were far inferior to her. Ever since she started serving Meng Liang, she was still alive and well. Meng Liang's mood became much better after being flattered by the manservant. When they arrived at the Lu mansion, Meng Liang didn't feel threatened by Meng Hun's attention. Meng Liang's heart started to feel restless again. Ever since he had sex at the age of 11, he couldn't leave a woman for even a day. Now that his life was no longer in danger, he naturally had to think about those things that made him happy. He couldn't help but think about the graceful figure of the young lady from before. Unfortunately, he had just thought of a way to sneak in and hadn't had time to implement it. The manservant had a thorough understanding of Meng Liang. To put it bluntly, when Meng Liang moved his butt, the manservant could tell what kind of *T he was going to take. The manservant rolled his eyes and suggested, Lang Jun, I heard that Lu Zhongxing was a rare handsome man in Hejin County when he was young. His wives and concubines were all beautiful. Let's not talk about anything else. Isn't Madame Gu Zhen also a charming beauty? The fact that Meng Liang was not Gu Zhen's biological son was known to everyone who had served him before. Meng Liang hated his eldest brother the most because he was talented and virtuous. All the elders of the Meng clan liked him very much and even decided to make him the successor of the clan. But what about him? Even though he was also the second son of the first wife, his actions were too absurd, and he accomplished nothing in his studies and writing. That was why Meng Liang liked to insult Meng Hun every time he got drunk. The secrets he revealed included the mystery of his birth. Because of this, it was unknown how many groups of maids and manservants had been secretly disposed of. He was the only one whom Meng Liang liked and spared his life. Meng Liang's eyes widened. The servant's suggestion had opened the door to a whole new world for him. However, even though Gu Zhen was not his biological mother, she was his biological mother in name. Moreover, she was his father's first wife. The manservant saw that he was obviously moved, but still pretended to be reserved, so he directly pushed him. Lang Jun is not related to that madam by blood. Moreover, I heard that Lu Zhongxing did not bring any concubines with him when he took office in Hu County. That madam has been alone for many years. How could she endure loneliness? Meng Liang was very tempted, and the servant took the opportunity to add more firewood. As for the fact that Madame is Master's legal wife, she has already remarried Lu Zhongxing. What does that have to do with the Meng family? She wasn't buried in the Meng family's ancestral grave after her death, and her name isn't recorded in the family tree either. She's no longer Master's wife, and she's not related to you by blood. This, Meng Liang was completely convinced. When he thought of the fact that Gu Zhen was once his father's wife, he felt an inexplicable excitement in his heart. The manservant continued, If Lang Jun is afraid of that lady's identity, I heard that Lu Zhongxing has a few beautiful concubines. Wouldn't they be able to please Lang Jun? If it doesn't work, doesn't Lu Zhongxing still have a daughter? Even though she's just a concubine's daughter and doesn't deserve you. Meng Liang raised his hand to stop the manservant and scolded him with a smile. You sly fellow, You know me best." The manservant lowered his head and smiled as he accepted Meng Liang's compliment. He secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. Although it would be unfair to Lu Shi to shift the blame to Meng Liang, if Meng Liang's Lang Jun was still thinking about the young lady and left the Lu residence without a second thought, his life would be forfeit if he was unlucky enough to meet Meng Han. His family was still making a living in Meng County. If Meng Liang died because of his carelessness, his family would not be able to survive either. He didn't want to be the accomplice of a villain, but he had to look out for himself. Only by serving Meng Liang well could he and his family live a decent life. He could only hope that those stupid guards would find his Lang Jun quickly and leave the Lu residence. Only then would they be able to commit less sin. If they were unlucky, Meng Liang would ruin all the women in Lu Shi's backyard, and he would be at his wit's end. With that thought in mind, the manservant helped Meng Liang change his clothes and prepared to hand them over to the maidservants in the residence to wash them. "You, come here." After searching for a long time, the manservant finally found a maidservant who was cleaning with a broom. When a maidservant heard the manservant call out to her in a rough voice, she was so scared that her head shrank. She stepped forward timidly and bowed. The manservant stuffed the clothes into the maidservant's arms and ordered her around. "Go and wash Longjun's clothes and bring them back clean tomorrow." If they were still in the Meng residence, Meng Liang's clothes would be thrown away after wearing them once. Why would they be washed and worn a second time? But the manservant knew that the Lu residence was not like the Meng residence. They didn't have that many ready-made clothes for Meng Liang to change into. The maidservant lowered her head and took the bag of clothes. Her whole body was trembling, as if she was frightened by the manservant's overbearing aura. Seeing that the maidservant was so afraid of him, the manservant felt proud. It was as if he had regained the prestige of the Meng residence, but he still had to belittle her. A small place is a small place. Even his servants are so cowardly. Just a little louder, and they're scared like quails. The maidservant left Meng Liang's courtyard with the clothes. When she passed by the garden, she was so angry that she threw the clothes to the ground and stepped on them to vent her anger. But when she thought of the conversation she had just heard, her heart trembled. Her eyes fell on Jiang Pengji's courtyard. The maidservant secretly bit her lip and squatted down to pick up the clothes. She changed her direction and didn't want to go to the laundry room. At that time, the key to Jiang Pengji's courtyard had already been locked. The maidservant could only ask the gatekeeper in a low voice. "I have something important to tell Lang Jun in detail. Sister, please do me a favor and help me pass the message. I think Lang Jun is already asleep at this time. If it's not urgent, we could talk about it tomorrow." The maidservant shook her head. She was holding back the words in her heart. Her body was still weak and frightened. She had been transferred from the kitchen to the guest's courtyard as a maidservant. It was supposed to be a very leisurely job because there were very few people in the Lu residence, let alone staying overnight. But she didn't expect that a big Buddha would come today. She didn't pay attention to her volume and was overheard by the maidservant. "This is very urgent. Please make an exception, sister." The gatekeeper sighed and said, "Then I'll help you pass the message. If you annoy Lang Jun, you'll have to bear the consequences." In fact, Jiang Pengji had already laid down to rest. Hearing the maidservant's message, she was still sleepy. She picked up her cloak and draped it over her shoulders. "Let her in." The door opened, and a figure wearing a maidservant's clothes walked in. Jiang Pengji immediately recognized the person. Chapter 131. The maid was the victim who had been forced by the servants when Jiang Pengji first came to the Lu manor. But she remembered that she had already instructed the butler to move her from the kitchen, where the work was heavy, to the guest room, which was very quiet. The maidservant raised her head. The words she wanted to say were stuck in her throat. She didn't know where to start. The more he couldn't speak, the more anxious he felt. The more anxious he was, the more he couldn't control his mouth. She thought that she would see her Lang Jun angry and feel that she was playing with her, but she didn't expect her Lang Jun to look at her tenderly and comfort her with a gentle voice. Jiang Pengji looked her up and down. "Don't rush. Speak slowly." The rules of the Lu residence were not strict, but everyone had their own jobs, and the range of activities was fixed. The corners of her clothes and socks were stained with relatively dry mud that was as fine as dust. There were gardeners taking care of the soil in the garden, so the soil on the ground was slightly wet. The mud was thicker and bigger, and it was also sticky. Therefore, the dust on her clothes and feet must have come from cleaning the guest room. At the moment, there were only Meng Liang and his servants in the guest room of the Lu mansion. The clothes in the maid's hands were also Meng Liang's. Her clothes were neat, and her hair was clean. There were no traces of washing, which meant that she hadn't touched her hair since she combed it in the morning. Although she looked a little panicked, she didn't look desperate or humiliated. Therefore, she probably didn't come to find him because she was bullied by Meng Liang and his servants. Then why? Jiang Pengji furrowed her brows. The only explanation was that she had accidentally overheard the master and servant talking nonsense. In the blink of an eye, she had already made up her mind, and her voice became even softer. Think about it slowly. Tell me what you want to say. I'll listen here. It took the maidservant quite a while to overcome the nervousness and fear in her heart. She stuttered and roughly repeated what she had heard. Jiang Pengji's face remained expressionless as she listened, as if the servant girl's words were within her expectations. As a matter of fact, it was more or less the same. How could a dog spit out ivory? Similarly, how could a scumbag like Meng Liang say anything nice? To be able to scare this maidservant to such an extent, the content was definitely not ordinary. After listening, she nodded calmly. You can stay here tonight. The maidservant's face suddenly paled, as if she had recalled something embarrassing. Jiang Pengji knew that she had misunderstood. She could not help but add, I have my own way of dealing with a master and servant. They are not easy to deal with. If you continue to stay in the guest room to clean up, you might be at a disadvantage. I'll talk to the housekeeper tomorrow and have him transfer you to my courtyard. Your message was very timely. If I hadn't warned them in advance, I wouldn't have known that they could be this crazy. With regards to this arrangement, the servant girl naturally would not object. She even felt slightly relieved. Perhaps because she had been hurt before, she was more sensitive to the emotions of others. That pair of master and servant were not good people at all. If they continued to stay there for another day, she would tremble with fear for another day. Now that he had been transferred to second Longjuan's yard, he would be treated much better, just like a promotion. Thank you, Langjun. Jiang Pengji asked, what is your name? Your servant's name is Aju. The maidservant replied respectfully. Even though they were all servants, their monthly salary was different depending on which part of the Lu residence they worked in. All in all, second Longjuan's yard was the best. The monthly salary of a servant girl was more than double of what she used to get. With the monthly salary, she could still keep a few dozen copper coins for her personal savings after giving money to the family every month. Aju, Jiang Pengji thought for a while and asked, is there any special meaning to it? Who gave it to you? The maidservant shook her head and said seriously, I didn't have a name before I came to the Lu residence. The servant in the kitchen took pity on me and gave me one. If that's the case, then change it. Jiang Pengji thought for a while. She already had Takshu and Xuanmei by her side, so she should add another one. Nongqin. The maidservant was illiterate, so she did not know which word was Nongqin, but it sounded much nicer than Aju. Langjun had given it to her personally. Jiang Pengji was not sleepy, so she started chatting with Nongqin. Do you often do manual labor at home? I'm very strong. Although her body was thin and weak, her strength was indeed greater than that of ordinary women. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to carry the red lacquered wooden stick and beat that servant until he breathed his last. However, because of her greater strength, she ate more than others. Jiang Pengji was amused by her answer. She praised her with a smile. It's a good thing to be strong. Nongqin was a little embarrassed. She had been scolded by her parents for eating too much when she was young. Her grandmother even saw her as a jinx. In the end, she listened to a broker in the neighborhood and sold her at a low price. Selling her not only earned the money, but also some monthly salary. As for how Nongqin would live in the future, her family did not care. Jiang Pengji said to Nongqin, "Do you want to learn martial arts from me?" She wanted to change the world, and she had to start with the people around her. Who said women were not as good as men, as long as they did not disappoint her? Although it was a little late to learn martial arts at that age, she wanted people who were not afraid of death and had strength. The other requirements could be put aside. Nongqin was surprised, but she still nodded solemnly. Her life was saved by Lang Jun, so it belonged to him. Yes. Jiang Pengji smiled. Very good. Nongqin did not know why her Lang Jun suddenly smiled so happily, but she was happy when he was happy. Although it was just to promote a servant girl, it was related to personnel changes in the Lus, so she had to inform the housekeeper. When she heard the news the next day, Takshu's eyes widened in surprise. Lang Jun is going to teach her martial arts? Not really. I'll just give her some pointers, Jiang Pengji said with a smile. She's a silly girl. Therefore, she would complete Jiang Pengji's training even if she had to risk her life. That was one of the main reasons why Jiang Pengji chose her. Takshu did not understand, but seeing her Lang Jun's cunning smile, she naturally understood that her Lang Jun admired the servant girl. Xuemei was doing needlework at the side. She naturally glared at Takshu. She's a good girl. Why do you want her to learn martial arts and play with guns? If she plays with guns and sticks, how could she serve her in-laws when she gets married? How could she be a good wife and teach her children? Won't she blame you if she can't get married? Jiang Pengji said calmly. Why should she serve her in-laws and teach her children? Xuemei was about to explain the reason, but she suddenly remembered her Lang Jun's gender. Her heart skipped a beat. She knew she was unlucky. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.